Chapter 630. But at this moment, the auras of the 12 youths were extremely powerful. If they were placed in the outside world, even in the entire central continent, they would be considered as experts. The speed of the 12 of them wasn't fast. Their eyes were searching for something below. The one in the lead was a young man who looked to be about 22 or 23 years old. He had a tall nose, thin lips, and sword-like eyebrows. On his handsome face, there was a deep gaze. Especially the side of his face, the outline of his face was almost perfect. Senior brother Feng, these rookies seem to be getting better at hiding. In the air, a young man with an extraordinary temperament said to the handsome young man in the lead. They can't hide. Take your time and you'll find them. The handsome young man who was called Senior Brother Feng smiled indifferently. His eyes suddenly looked at the vast mountain range in front of him. There was a slight fluctuation in his deep gaze as he said with a smile, "Didn't we find them? There are quite a lot of people in front of us. I hope they haven't been taught a lesson. Otherwise, our efforts would have been in vain. In front, teach the rookies a lesson." Behind the handsome young man, the figures behind him were extremely excited. They sped up and flew towards the sky. Amidst the mountain peaks and half of the valley, 26 figures stood in unison at this moment. Many pairs of eyes looked at the sky in front of them. A moment later, 12 figures appeared in front of everyone's eyes as they hurriedly rushed over. Are you guys ready? Are you going to be bullied by them? Are you going to rise up and fight back? Are you going to be mocked by them? Are you going to be trampled under their feet or protect your dignity? Let them know that we're not to be trifled with. Looking at the 12 figures flying towards them, Du Xiaofu said to the people around him. Come, let them know that we're not to be trifled with. Let's fight it out with them. Numerous blood-red eyes stared intently at the 12 figures in front of them. In any case, the energy copper talismans on their bodies had already been snatched away. There was nothing to be afraid of anymore since they had nothing to be afraid of. Du Xiaofu smiled and said to the people behind him in an extremely provocative manner, "They took your copper energy talismans. Do you dare to take their copper energy talismans, or do you dare to tuck your tail between your legs and admit defeat?" Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, and Mo Wen were stunned when they heard Du Xiaofu's words. The others were stunned for a moment. However, all of them seemed to have been provoked. Immediately, their eyes turned blood-red. With martial uncle Du Xiaofu taking the lead, who says we don't dare? Let's snatch it. Rob them. Under Du Xiaofu's incitement, each of the new inner sect disciples felt their blood boil and their eyes turn red. Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, and Mo Wen exchanged glances as they watched Du Xiaofu incite the inner sect disciples. They no longer felt like they were in the ancient heaven sect. Instead, they felt like they had entered a bandit's lair. They really wondered if this brat had been a bandit in the past. He wants to drag people into the water. A smile appeared on Judge Hao's face. Whoosh whoosh, 12 figures landed in front of him. 12 powerful auras swept out, and each of them was extremely powerful. All 12 of them had reached the Martial King realm. A total of 12 Martial King realm cultivators. When Mu Jiejia saw the handsome youth in the middle, her brows furrowed as her expression turned serious. She immediately whispered to Du Xiaofu, "Captain, we're in trouble. Feng Yutang is here. Is that guy very famous?" Du Xiaofu's gaze also landed on the extremely handsome young man at the front. There was a slight ripple in his eyes. The young man's aura was not weak at all. It was vigorous and continuous. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Judge Hao's expression was a little serious at this time. He counted beside Du Xiaofu and said, "Big brother, that Feng Yutang is ranked 10th on the bronze leaderboard. He has the talent of a hero. Even on the silver leaderboard, he can probably be ranked within the top 50. There are 2 guys behind him who are both ranked within the top 30 on the bronze leaderboard. The 10th on the bronze ranking seems to be at the peak of the mysterious peak Martial King realm." Du Xiaofu murmured as he looked at Feng Yutang with interest. It seems like we've come in vain. We've already been attacked. The 12 figures landed. The 12 experts on the bronze ranking immediately looked at Du Xiaofu and the others. When they saw that the badge on someone's shoulder was glowing red, they immediately became disappointed. There are also some who haven't been attacked. There are 5 guys who haven't been attacked yet. A blue-robed youth said. His aura was slightly fluctuating. It was only below Feng Yutang. Ha, that's right. It seems like there are a few outstanding talents. Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, Mo Wen, and Judge Hao. I know those guys. A burly youth in a brocade robe looked at Mu Jiejia and the others. He directly ignored Du Xiaofu and laughed loudly, but there are 4 outstanding talents. If we take care of 4 outstanding talents at once, the other teams won't be able to show off. 4 outstanding talents. It seems like this trip was not in vain. Feng Yutang, who was in the middle, revealed a smile on his handsome face. Naturally, he was more interested in teaching a lesson to a genius than teaching an ordinary inner sect disciple a lesson. Did you guys notice? Those guys are strange. They didn't run when they saw us. Among the 12, there was a well-dressed youth who was puzzled. In the past 2 days, the new inner sect disciples they met all ran away in panic when they saw them. However, those rookies in front of them were very strange. None of them showed any signs of running away. They're probably scared silly. Anyway, they can't run away. A short-sleeved youth said indifferently. His aura fluctuated as he rubbed his palms together. He raised his head and said, in front, just as the short-sleeved youth opened his mouth to speak, a roar came from the front. The 12 people on the bronze ranking, listen up. If you don't want us to take care of you, hand over the energy bronze talisman. Otherwise, we'll show you what's good for you. Du Xiaofu took a step forward and shouted at Bai Yutang and the others. His voice rumbled and resounded throughout the mountains. When they heard Du Xiaofu's words, the 12 bronze-ranking experts who were about to speak were instantly stunned. Something didn't seem right. Who was the one robbing who? Why were those noobs trying to rob them? Haha! After being stunned for a short while, Feng Yutang and the other 12 bronze-ranking experts could not help but burst into laughter. Is that kid scared silly? The well-dressed youth could not help but laugh. Looks like you guys don't intend to hand over the energy bronze talisman. Du Xiaofu said regretfully. He took a step forward and floated in the air. He looked down at Feng Yutang and waved his fist. Are you Feng Yutang? Hand over the energy bronze talisman. Otherwise, I don't mind beating you up so badly that even your parents won't recognize you. Who was Feng Yutang? He was an outstanding talent of the ancient heaven sect and was ranked in the top 10 of the bronze ranking. Even on the silver ranking, he had the strength to be ranked in the top 50. At this moment, he was being threatened by a rookie. No matter how good his temper was, he could not hold it in. Kid, you're asking for a beating. Feng Yutang shouted coldly. Profound energy gushed out from the soles of his feet. He stomped on the ground and his body shot up into the sky. The blazing profound energy in his body surged, and a majestic blazing energy rushed up. Wherever his figure passed, even the space rippled and the temperature was incomparably hot. In just a short moment, Feng Yutang's figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu as fast as lightning. The profound energy in his body was dazzling, and his aura was monstrous. Feng Yutang waved his hand and slapped a palm print directly at Du Xiaofu. Under the palm print, the sound of space trembling resounded. At this moment, a malicious smile suddenly appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. Just as Feng Yutang's palm print was about to hit, Du Xiaofu was already prepared. He waved his hand and a monstrous dazzling light spread out from the center of his palm. The mid-grade Dao artifact, Heaven's Net, appeared in his hand. Accompanied by an astonishing energy fluctuation, Heaven's Net turned into a dazzling talisman rune that spread out. It was as if it was going to cover the sky and the sun, directly enveloping a large area of attack in front of it. Boom! As soon as the heaven's net appeared, the entire sky trembled with a loud bang. The terrifying energy was like a tsunami, and with a clanging sound wave, it came continuously, immediately enveloping the stunned Feng Yutang. A mighty aura swept out, destroying Feng Yutang's palm print attack. The dazzling talisman runes surged like a vast ocean, instantly drowning a large area of space. It's a mid-grade Dao artifact, not good. Feng Yutang's face changed greatly. It was too late to retreat. The heaven's net had already covered the sky. How could Feng Yutang have thought that an unremarkable kid would have a mid-grade Dao artifact waiting for him? More importantly, this purple-robed kid was very extraordinary. The pressure of activating a mid-grade Dao artifact actually made him feel uneasy. Heaven's net has a long history. Suppress. Du Xiaofu did not hold back as he condensed his profound qi into the heaven's net. A terrifying pressure suddenly erupted from the heavenly net that blotted out the sky. Countless talisman runes gushed out, causing the surrounding space to tremble. It seemed to bind and swallow everything. In the end, it directly suppressed and bound Feng Yutang, making it difficult for him to struggle. It was hard to deny that Feng Yutang was strong, and not just strong, but he was unlucky enough to meet Du Xiaofu. 10 chapters in a row, there's more to come. Chapter 631. Swish, the heavenly net spread the light of runes and tightly enveloped Feng Yutang. It was like a fishing net that caught a big fish, and then it fell heavily to the ground. Within the heavenly net, the dazzling runes suppressed Feng Yutang, making it impossible for him to escape. Feng Yutang, who was ranked 10th on the bronze list and was famous in the ancient sky sect, had become a prisoner in a single move. The entire sky was dead silent for a short time. Everyone on both sides was stunned. Who would have thought that Feng Yutang, who was ranked 10th on the bronze list, would be defeated in a single move? That kid is difficult to deal with. Senior brother Feng is bound by the Dao artifact. Quickly help senior brother Feng. It was only a short moment before the remaining 11 people finally came to their senses. A young man in a blue robe, whose aura was second only to Feng Yutang's, suddenly swept out with the mysterious aura of the martial king realm. A terrifying aura soared into the sky like a storm. The young man in the blue robe turned into a flash of lightning and instantly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. The terrifying aura caused the surrounding space to fluctuate like stormy waves. The young man in the blue robe clenched his 5 fingers and waved his hand. A fist print smashed directly at Du Xiaofu like a meteorite. Mysterious Soul Eye. Just as the meteorite-like fist rapidly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, a strange rune suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's eyes. Swish, at this moment, it was as if there were tens of thousands of rays of light that swept out from Du Xiaofu's eyes. The rune light overlapped and finally enveloped the former like a ray of light that instantly appeared. In a short moment, the young man in the blue robe's eyes became dull, and his fist also became sluggish. However, it did not take long for his dull eyes to recover. However, it was too late. Du Xiaofu was already prepared. Back then, Yi Xian, who was at the mysterious martial king realm, was also defeated by this move. Although the cultivation of the young man in the blue robe seemed to be slightly stronger than Yi Xian, it was about the same for Du Xiaofu. Bang! A fist print wrapped in golden qi, with an incomparably domineering and fierce aura, directly landed on the former's chest. Rumble! The body of the blue-robed young man violently smashed onto the ground below like a bird with broken wings. A large mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. His chest and ribs felt as if they had fallen apart. A huge force swept over him, and his internal organs were shaken. He could no longer get up. From an outsider's point of view, Du Xiaofu had only used one move. Another martial emperor realm mystical layer cultivator was knocked down to the ground in a single blow. It was a total trampling. Feng Yutang was captured by Du Xiaofu using a Dao artifact, but that Martial King Realm mystery-level cultivator was seriously injured by Du Xiaofu with just one move. Goo goo, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The 21 newly promoted inner sect disciples, who had been riled up, were now staring so hard that their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. In comparison, the remaining 10 experts on the bronze list were even more shocked and were unable to recover from their shock. Don't just stand there. Quickly take care of those fellows on the bronze list. Charge! Hao Guan took out a pair of large hammers as his aura surged. With a loud shout, he directly pounced towards the 10 people on the bronze list. Attack! Qiao Yingmeng and Mo Wen were the first to recover from their shock. Their profound qi suddenly surged out, and with a vigorous attack, they also pounced towards the 10 experts on the bronze list. Charge! An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. Let them know that we're not to be trifled with. Charge! 21 inner sect disciples with faces full of excitement rushed out one by one. Although their strength and cultivation couldn't be compared to Qiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Hao Guan, and the others, they had the advantage in numbers. When they gathered together, their aura was astonishing. Bang bang bang. Instantly, an intense chaotic battle began. The air trembled and the ground shook. Mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. Rune energy soared into the sky. Terrifying energy swept out and flooded a large area. Roar! The 21 newly promoted inner sect disciples who had already been robbed by the bronze list experts knew that their cultivation wasn't enough, so they directly activated their pulse spirits to suppress them. Huge pulse spirit phantoms roared and 5 or 6 pulse spirits surrounded a bronze list expert, making it impossible for the bronze list experts to escape in a short period of time. Not far away, Qiao Yingmeng, Hao Guan, and Mo Wen made their moves. Each of them blocked a bronze list expert without any pressure. Quickly take care of these fellows. You guys work together to deal with that purple-robed brat. A young man in a short robe shouted. His gaze was serious as profound qi surged beneath his feet. Runes soared into the sky as he sent a palm filled with vigorous profound qi towards Qiao Yingmeng who was fighting. Let's end this quickly and take care of these fellows. Facing the attack of the young man in a short robe, Qiao Yingmeng shouted. She wasn't afraid in the slightest. Her body was like a vigorous female leopard as she rapidly dodged the opponent's palm. Her delicate hands trembled as the curved blades on her wrists appeared in her hands. Buzz buzz. The two curved blades intersected in the shape of a Tai Chi symbol. Dazzling and sharp runes erupted as they spun out like lightning. With the sound of wind and thunder, they drew a strange whirlpool arc towards the former. Such a strange curved blade attack caused the young man in a short robe's expression to change. It was impossible to guard against it as his expression became more and more unsightly. Motherfucker, I'll take care of you guys today. Hao Guan shouted as he waved his pair of large hammers. A terrifying aura erupted as he forced his opponent to retreat step by step. He was complaining in his heart. One-on-one, who's afraid of who? Mo Wen wasn't willing to be outdone. He also held a long spear practitioner weapon in his hand. Mysterious runes on the long spear surged, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate. Profound qi poured into the long spear practitioner weapon in his hand as he attacked his opponent with lightning speed. Go down. Du Xiaofu stood in the air with a rather domineering aura. Golden profound qi swept out from his body as a domineering and sharp aura erupted like a volcano. He directly punched the fist of a young man in a long robe. Bang, bang. With a muffled thunder-like sound, the young man in a long robe's fist cracked as his bones were broken. Before he could react, he was punched in the chest again. A huge force swept out. The young man in a long robe felt as if his internal organs were about to be shattered. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood as his body fell down. With golden light overflowing from his body, Du Xiaofu jumped up like a peerless ferocious beast. Among this group of people who came with the bronze board, the two strongest people had already been beaten down. What else did Du Xiaofu have to fear? Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu shouted as the mysterious runes of the golden runes gushed out layer by layer. His hand directly fell on a strong young man in a black robe and directly slapped his body down, causing blood to spurt out. Thunder Tremor Fist. A thin and short young man took the opportunity to appear behind Du Xiaofu. He fully activated a fist print and a terrifying aura broke out. The runes in front of the fist print surged up to the sky as if they were about to explode the space. Du Xiaofu's expression remained unchanged as if he had eyes on the back of his head. His hair fluttered behind his back as he quickly moved to the side to avoid the blow. Du Xiaofu's figure floated like a god, changing unpredictably. Using the wave-like free steps, Du Xiaofu took the opportunity to appear in front of the young man. Then, he waved his hand, and a golden light swept out. A fist print containing a mysterious move fell directly. Bang! With a muffled sound, the young man couldn't resist the punch. The defense on his body was directly destroyed. Then his body fell down from the sky, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. This scene was too shocking. Du Xiaofu rushed into the battlefield like a human-shaped, peerless, ferocious beast. He swept in all directions, swallowing mountains and rivers, and swept in all directions. Mu, a young expert on the bronze list, was also forced to activate his pulse spirit. The pulse spirit of the martial king realm. A flaming demon ox phantom was like a living creature. It roared and slammed fiercely towards Du Xiaofu. Suddenly, the giant demon ox phantom rushed out. The temperature in the sky was scorching, and the energy was like waves, violently surging. It's a pity that it's not a real ox. Otherwise, I could eat roast beef. Du Xiaofu roared. His long black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes flickered with golden light. He was domineering and fierce. He raised his hand again and slapped out. A domineering and fierce aura suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's body and swept out, causing the space to tremble. Chi-la-la, a pale golden light surged, accompanied by the flickering of pale golden mysterious runes. Layer upon layer, they were like the wings of a rock. Then, under the trembling gaze of the demon cow, this hand ruthlessly slammed into the illusory fiery body of the demon cow at close proximity. Hua-la-la. Before everyone could recover, they heard a low muffled sound. Then, they saw that the blazing demon ox phantom's pulse spirit began to crack. In the end, it was smashed into broken runes by Du Xiaofu. Puchi, the pulse spirit was directly destroyed. The young man's face turned pale. He was seriously injured, and he could not stop vomiting mouthfuls of blood. Get down! Du Xiaofu followed up with a punch that was neither heavy nor light, and the young man's body fell down like a kite with a broken string. Boom! In the end, his body fell heavily to the ground, causing the ground to tremble and cracks to spread. Then, large amounts of blood spurted out from his mouth. 11 consecutive chapters. I've been writing all night. I'm so tired that I don't have the strength to speak. I hope everyone can see Xiao Yu's efforts. On the last day of the month, Xiao Yu is willing to ask for flowers, support, and all support. I especially need flowers. 11 consecutive chapters. Brothers, can you give Xiao Yu a miracle? After staying up all night, Xiao Yu needs to sleep for a few hours. Today's outburst is not over yet. Tonight, Xiao Yu will continue to have outbursts, and it will not stop at this. Calling for all the support, especially the flowers. Thank you to all the readers. Chapter 632. Everyone was shocked. Du Xiaofu was too strong, so strong that it was unimaginable. That terrifying meridian spirit was dispersed by Du Xiaofu. This was simply terrifying and shocking. Charge! It's time for us to take revenge. However, in the midst of the shock, the newly promoted inner sect disciples were undoubtedly stimulated. Each and every one of them attacked the experts on the bronze roll with all their might. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had already taken care of a few experts on the bronze roll, which greatly reduced the pressure on the others. The newly promoted inner sect disciples were now in groups of 7 or 8, controlling 7 or 8 meridian spirit demonic beast phantoms to suppress one of them. 8-directional clear sky array. Mu Jejia was trying to buy time. A 6-star elementary level talisman array was finally condensed. 21 array flags flew out and turned into a powerful talisman array that covered the sky. It directly trapped the 2 bronze rank youths inside the talisman array. Golden Xian Qi enveloped Du Xiaofu's entire body in a golden radiance. The golden radiance was dazzling like the sun. A domineering aura swept across. Du Xiaofu once again rushed into the battle circle like a ferocious beast. The domineering aura swept across, causing the entire area to tremble. Bang! An unlucky young expert on the bronze roll was also sent flying by Du Xiaofu's unceremonious slap. Du Xiaofu didn't hold back. He had his own plans. Those experts on the bronze roll were looking for trouble with him everywhere. If they were to arrive at the giant rock plaza, he would be the unlucky one. Therefore, he might as well take advantage of the opportunity to defeat them one by one. It would be better than being unlucky in the giant rock plaza. Therefore, Du Xiaofu made up his mind. Since there were people looking for trouble with him, he couldn't just stay idle. He would gain the upper hand by striking first, and those who strike later would suffer. Boom! Another young expert on the bronze roll was suppressed by 7 or 8 newly promoted inner sect disciples meridian spirit demonic beast. Du Xiaofu directly rushed into the battle circle and punched him until he spurted out blood. His defense was destroyed, and he was besieged by the newly promoted inner sect disciples. He was in an even more miserable state. He who strikes first gains the advantage, and he who strikes last suffers. Du Xiaofu roared as golden light erupted from his body. His long hair danced in the wind, and golden runes flickered in his eyes. He charged into the battle and heavily injured the young experts on the bronze rankings. Rumble, Du Xiaofu, who was like a peerless ferocious beast, charged forward. Resplendent golden light flooded a large area and swept out in all directions, shocking everyone. Each and every one of those unlucky bronze rankers who were caught in the crossfire of Du Xiaofu's attacks would definitely not have a good ending. Du Xiaofu's strength was too strong, so strong that it shocked everyone on the bronze board. Was that purple-robed youth really a newly promoted inner sect disciple? A great battle shook the mountains, as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. However, it didn't last for long. With Du Xiaofu's forceful intervention, the final result was obvious. In the end, the bodies of the 11 youths fell to the ground. All of them were dripping with blood. It was a tragic sight. There was also Feng Yutang, who was suppressed by the heavenly net. He was also lying on the ground and looking at the scenery. Feng Yutang's eyes were still staring at the scene that just happened. He still hadn't recovered from his shock. Judge Hao, Xiao Yingmeng, Mo1, and Mu Jejia had consumed some of their energy, but it wasn't a big deal. The faces of the 21 newly promoted inner sect disciples were all pale. Some of them had sustained injuries on top of their injuries and had expended a lot of energy. However, when they saw the 12 experts on the bronze roll lying on the ground, and one of them was in such a terrible state, they were all extremely excited as they cried out in excitement. This guy, is he really human? Xiao Yingmeng stared at Du Xiaofu from the side. It could be said that the 12 bronze rankers were all dealt with by Du Xiaofu. The only useful thing they did was to delay the bronze rankers for him. In the end, it was that guy who intervened and dealt with them one by one. Hand over the energy bronze talisman. Du Xiaofu looked at the bloody and miserable bronze rankers on the ground and shouted like a bandit. Is he really going to steal from the bronze rankers? Xiao Yingmeng, Mu Jejia, and Mo1 looked at each other in dismay. At this time, they truly believed that Du Xiaofu wasn't joking. This guy really wanted to steal from the bronze rankers. In your dreams. One of the youths who was hit by Du Xiaofu's sky-shaking wings gritted his teeth and coldly shouted. Being beaten up by a group of newbies was already a great humiliation. How could he endure being robbed of his bronze rankers? That was simply a great humiliation. How could he go out and meet people in the future? It doesn't matter. Not handing over the bronze rankers is the right thing to do. After sealing them, take off their clothes and throw them here. When they appear in the giant rock plaza, they will definitely become famous. Who knows, they might even become famous in the central state. Judge Hao laughed complacently. He wasn't afraid that these guys wouldn't obediently hand over the bronze rankers. Despicable, shameless. Hearing Judge Hao's words, Xiao Yingmeng couldn't help but roll her eyes. It's not very elegant. Mu Jiejia also looked at Judge Hao and sighed. This method, they were girls. Naturally, it wasn't easy for them to do it. This move is, Judge Hao was stunned. Then, he wanted to refute. This idea wasn't his at all. God knew that the savage and shameless guy in front of him yesterday had already stripped a guy on the bronze rankers. What are you? Shameless, despicable. Du Xiaofu immediately interrupted Judge Hao's words and said, you can even think of such a despicable and shameless idea. It's enough to show that you are a shameless and despicable person. I really misjudged you. Big brother, heavens, I'm being wronged. Judge Hao suddenly cried out. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He felt that he was being wronged more than Do Yi. This idea was clearly thought of by that savage and shameless guy, but now, it was pushed onto him. Judge Hao felt wronged. He looked at Xiao Yingmeng and Mu Jiejia who were looking at him with disdain. He was afraid that in their hearts, he would no longer have any image and integrity. If you have the ability, why don't you think of a noble idea to make them obediently hand over the energy copper talisman to you? Judge Hao shouted at Du Xiaofu, feeling wronged, I want to see what noble idea you can come up with. Du Xiaofu glanced at Judge Hao with disdain. Then, he looked at the 11 miserable and bloody experts on the bronze rankers on the ground and said, I think that if they don't hand over the energy copper talisman, we can seal them. Then, let them be together, hand in hand, mouth to mouth, and look at each other with affection. This is also the purpose of our ancient heaven sect's disciples to love each other. Captain's idea is much more elegant. Mu Jiejia immediately nodded in agreement. Not bad, this seems quite fun. I really want to see them holding hands, kissing each other, looking at each other affectionately. Xiao Yingmeng's interest was immediately piqued. She couldn't wait to start fiddling with it. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the expressions of the 11 extraordinary youths on the bronze rankers became extremely ugly. Letting them hold hands, mouth to mouth, and look at each other with affection was better than directly killing them. If this spread out, they wouldn't have any face to stay in the central continent. You dare, brat, if you dare to touch us, we won't let you off. Someone couldn't help but shout. It was precisely because he was afraid that he shouted. I've already taken care of you, do you think I won't dare to? Du Xiaofu howled. He was extremely excited and didn't have the slightest bit of fear. I'll hand over the bronze energy talisman. If you dare to touch us, we won't let you off even to the ends of the earth. A miserable-looking youth wearing a blue robe shouted. He was willing to hand over the bronze energy talisman. He was ranked in the top 30 of the bronze rankers, but if this brat really made them look like they were in love with each other, mouth to mouth, and hand to hand, then he wouldn't be able to face anyone in the future. If you're willing to hand over the bronze energy talisman, then I naturally won't touch you. I only want the bronze energy talisman, but don't provoke me. If you provoke me, then I can do anything. Du Xiaofu waved his fists and said. Amazing, really amazing. Judge Hao looked at Du Xiaofu. He was now prostrating himself in admiration. Mouth to mouth, loving each other. Evil, this was too evil. Judge Hao discovered that not only was this Du Xiaofu cruel and shameless, he was also despicable. Whoever offended him might even have their ancestral graves dug out. Subsequently, although the 11 older youths on the bronze rankers were furious, under the threat of Du Xiaofu, they could only obediently hand over all the bronze energy talismans in their badges. They were robbed clean, and even the last bronze energy talisman was not kept. Du Xiaofu directly distributed the bronze energy talismans to the 20 inner sect disciples who had already been robbed. Each of them received 20 bronze energy talismans. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Seeing this, the 21 newly promoted inner sect disciples cheered excitedly. Each of the 11 experts on the bronze rankers had more than 100 bronze energy talismans in their hands. In total, they had more than 1,000 bronze energy talismans. Especially the stronger youths on the bronze rankers, they had more than 200 bronze energy talismans. Mo1, Mu Jiejia, Judge Hao, and Qiao Yingmeng each received 150 bronze energy talismans from Du Xiaofu. One bronze energy talisman could last for 10 days in the ancient bronze space. This was equivalent to 2 years' worth of bronze energy talismans. They wouldn't have to worry about the bronze energy talismans for 2 years in the ancient bronze space. Swallowing their saliva, Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, and Mo1 also silently put away the 150 bronze energy talismans. They simply couldn't refuse. This time, we've been dragged into the water. Judge Hao chuckled. Without a doubt, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo1, and Mu Jiejia were dragged into the water step by Du Xiaofu. Thank you to book friend XXD1201 for tipping book 100, 135355, book friend 382, 64 for tipping book 3776 chasing wave coins. Beautiful vermilion bird which tipping book 10,000 chasing wave coins. My account still has another 20,000 chasing wave coins. I don't know which book friend gave me this generous reward. Little you can't see the record. Little you continues to write. Today's explosion, last 4 hours, begging for flowers. Chapter 633. Let senior brother Feng go. A tall and skinny young man roared at Du Xiaofu from the group of extraordinary youths, whose 11 energy copper talismans had been completely looted. However, there was clearly a lingering fear in his eyes as he looked at Du Xiaofu with a fearful expression. Can you hand over your energy copper talismans? Du Xiaofu ignored the young man and went to Feng Yutang, who was being suppressed by the heavenly net. I'll give you the energy copper talismans. I admit defeat. Feng Yutang clenched his teeth. How could he not see the current situation? This time, his team had been thoroughly defeated. Not only had they been trampled by a group of rookies, even their energy copper talismans had been stolen. This was simply a disgrace. However, in the face of absolute strength, they had no other choice. Okay. Du Xiaofu smiled in satisfaction. He formed a seal with his hand and it turned into rune energy. It passed through the heavenly net and landed on Feng Yutang's body. Pfft! Feng Yutang spat out a mouthful of blood as the rune energy landed on him. His complexion turned deathly pale. Brat, what did you do to senior brother Feng? A young man shouted. The eyes of the crowd trembled with rage, but no one dared to step forward to stop Du Xiaofu. Don't worry, it won't take his life. It's just a small trick. He won't be able to use his celestial qi for 7 days. If he uses his celestial qi within 7 days, his blood will flow in reverse and his celestial qi will become chaotic. If it's light, he will go crazy. If it's serious, his spirit gate will explode, Du Xiaofu said to everyone. It was the last hour of the last day in the giant rock space. Everyone would appear at the giant rock plaza. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to do this in order to prevent everyone on the bronze roll from ganging up on him. If he sealed Feng Yutang's celestial qi, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. After Du Xiaofu merged with the ancient barren space, there were many tricks in the ancient barren space. When Du Xiaofu was free, he studied some of them. However, he never found a suitable opportunity to use them. Hearing this, Feng Yutang and the other 12 people were furious. However, they were like fish on a chopping board. They couldn't do anything to Du Xiaofu. This guy is sinister. Xiao Yingmeng curled her lips and cursed. It wasn't hard for everyone to guess why Du Xiaofu sealed Feng Yutang's celestial qi. It was probably to have one less powerful opponent in the giant rock plaza. Brat, good move. I, Feng Yutang, admit defeat. Can you tell me who defeated me? Feng Yutang's, his eyes, he's. Well said, I won't change my name. Your martial uncle, Du Xiaofu, is also here. Du Xiaofu chuckled. He put away the heavenly net and let Feng Yutang go. He said shamelessly, actually, it's not shameful for you to be defeated by your martial uncle. You're Du Xiaofu. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the expressions of the youths on the bronze roll became interesting. They were still looking for the legendary Du Xiaofu. Who knew that they would be beaten up so miserably by Du Xiaofu? After a short moment, Du Xiaofu and the others swaggered off after putting away the over 400 copper energy talismans in Feng Yutang's badge. Within the messy mountain range, Feng Yutang and the rest of the 12 were supporting each other in a dispirited manner. They watched as the group of people left. It was as if they could not believe that the 12 people on the copper ranking had actually been trampled by a group of rookies. Moreover, the energy copper talismans on their bodies had been completely stolen. Find those fellows on the bronze roll. Take revenge if you have a grudge, take revenge if you have a grudge. Screw them. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Loud shouts resounded in the gloomy space. The inner sect disciples, who had not only regained their bronze energy talismans, but had also doubled their bronze energy talismans. After robbing all the experts on the bronze roll and beating up a group of them, all the new inner sect disciples no longer feared the bronze roll experts. They no longer hid like before, but instead yelled and howled as they searched everywhere for the bronze roll experts. This feeling was like a large group of rats on the streets, howling and yelling that they wanted to beat up a cat. As the group passed by, they encountered many inner sect disciples who had already been robbed. When they saw this group of people howling and howling, they were all flabbergasted. These inner sect disciples knew each other. They had heard that Du Xiaofu had led the group to beat up the 10th place on the bronze roll, Feng Yutang's group, and even snatched back their bronze energy talismans. The eyes of the inner sect disciples who had been robbed lit up as though they had seen a glimmer of hope. They begged Du Xiaofu to bring them along as well. They wanted to seek revenge on the people on the bronze leaderboard. Du Xiaofu naturally did not refuse. Thus, by afternoon, the large group had already reached a total of 120 people. There were even 2 groups of new inner sect disciples who had not been found by the bronze roll experts. However, when they saw that Du Xiaofu's group was so large that even Mu Jiejia, Xiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Judge Hao, and other talents were among them, they immediately begged to join. Du Xiaofu did not have many requirements for these people who wanted to join, but it was not like he did not have any requirements. The first thing was that they had to listen to him. Otherwise, they could not blame him for being rude. At dusk, the gloomy and overcast space began to gradually darken. Amidst the cries of this group of people, a group of experts on the bronze ranking was finally attracted. There were a total of 9 people in the bronze roll team, 2 women and 7 men. Their auras were not ordinary and they were all like dragons and phoenixes among men. When these 9 bronze roll experts saw a large group of new rookies, they were secretly happy that they had reaped a great harvest. Following that, an unforgettable scene occurred. It's the fellows on the bronze roll, let's go. We've finally caught them, fuck them. Don't be polite, we'll take revenge if we have a grudge. In an instant, over 100 newly promoted inner sect disciples covered the skies as they directly pounced towards the 9 shocked people on the bronze board. Channel spirits were directly activated and practitioner weapons were used. Energy attacks filled the sky and swept in all directions. Roar, Rumble, in an instant, the earth and mountains shook and space trembled as muffled sounds like thunder. The scene of over 100 people directly charging towards the 9 bronze roll experts and attacking them with all their might was too shocking. It was something that the 9 bronze roll experts would never forget for the rest of their lives. The final outcome was obvious. With the savage Du Xiaofu, Mu Jiejia, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen and Judge Hao, the 9 bronze roll experts, 7 men and 2 women, were miserably lying on the messy rocky ground in a short period of time. The miserable 9 people's gazes trembled and they could not regain their senses. They even thought that they were dreaming. Of course, their final outcome was exactly the same as the bronze roll experts before them. These 9 bronze roll experts had over 1,000 copper energy talismans on them. Du Xiaofu took 200 of them without hesitation. Qiao Yingmeng, Hao Guan, Mu Jiejia, and Mo Wen each received 100 talismans with satisfaction. The remaining 500 talismans were divided equally among the 120 inner sect disciples, each receiving 4 or 5 energy copper talismans. At this moment, to the inner sect disciples, the amount of copper energy talismans they received was secondary. The most important thing was that they were extremely happy. As they watched the practitioners on the bronze ranking being ravaged one by one, these newly promoted inner sect disciples were all excited and agitated. In the ancient Sky sect, they had never heard of new inner sect disciples trampling on the bronze roll experts like this. They were definitely the first batch. This was a record and history. All of them felt a deep sense of pride in their hearts. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. Shouts resounded through the air. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had become the soul of this group of inner sect disciples. He had become their god. Bandit leader. Qiao Yingmeng glanced at Du Xiaofu, who was surrounded by everyone's waving arms and shouting. On her charming face, there were some ripples in her bright eyes. Her delicate red lips slightly opened as she murmured with a smile, "But this is quite fun." At night, the peaks stood tall and surrounded by mountains. The bright moon hung in the sky and the mountain peaks were surrounded by clouds and mist. Sect Master, it's really a mess. In the ancient and quiet side hall, Protector Hao looked at the green-clothed, black-haired Sima Ta Xing. He swallowed his saliva and said, "That kid Du Xiaofu has gathered more than 100 disciples. In just one day, he got rid of another 2 groups of bronze roll disciples. Not only did he trample on those bronze roll disciples, he also looted all their energy copper talismans." Feng Yutang, who was ranked 10th on the bronze roll, was even dealt with by that kid Du Xiaofu with the Manchu's Heaven's Net. Hearing this, Sima Ta Xing, who was holding a cup of tea in his mouth, almost spat it out. Then, a smile slowly appeared on his handsome face as he said, "Interesting, it's getting more and more interesting. Sect Master, if that kid Du Xiaofu continues to cause trouble like this, I'm afraid that the giant rock space will really be in chaos." Little girl Muhan's group also dealt with a group of bronze roll disciples today, but they didn't snatch the energy copper talismans from the bronze roll disciples. Protector Hao sighed and said helplessly, "There are a total of 10 groups of bronze roll disciples. Now, 5 of them have been dealt with, and only half of them are left. It doesn't matter. Tell the 3rd elder not to interfere." Sima Ta Xing smiled and said, "In addition, seal off the news. For the time being, don't let the other elders know about the situation inside." Yes. Protector Hao was helpless and could only leave in the end. After Protector Hao left, Sima Ta Xing slightly raised his head and gently placed the teacup in his hand on the table. His eyes narrowed as he smiled and muttered, "It's been a long time since the ancient Sky sect has been so lively." Chapter 634. In the giant rock space, at midnight, the space changed again. Du Xiaofu's mighty group of people gathered on top of a mountain peak so that they wouldn't be separated due to spatial changes when the time came. Rumble, the earth shook, the mountain shook, and the space trembled. This huge space was like a living maze that could change at any time. In a short period of time, everyone's surroundings changed again. In the dark night, everyone continued to heal their injuries. The next morning, auras woke up one by one. They were all shouting to find the people on the bronze board to settle the score. More than 100 people set off in a grandiose manner. They were all excited as they searched everywhere for the people on the bronze board. At this moment, the position of the prey and the hunter had started to change. Wherever this large group of people passed by, many of the newly promoted inner sect disciples who had been robbed and those who had not yet been robbed would join them. Although they did not meet any experts on the bronze board for the whole day, the group had grown to more than 200 people by dusk. It was absolutely majestic. So. At dusk, under the dusk sky, more than 10 people were flying in the air in the vast Rocky Mountain range. You can't run away, little rookies. Hand over the energy bronze talisman, or else you will be crying for your parents. Not far behind these 10 people, there were 8 figures flying in the air. They were even faster and their auras were more vigorous. It looked like they were about to catch up. Fatty, hurry, and help. The 10 people running in front were pale and had a grave expression. Suddenly, they saw a large group of people in front of them. Some of them seemed to be familiar with Judge Hao. They immediately landed as if they had met their savior. The ones who landed were 11 young men and a pretty girl wearing a light-colored long dress. The young man in front did not have an outstanding appearance, but his temperament was extraordinary. His eyes were deep and spirited. He wore a light blue long robe and was about 22 or 23 years old. He had short hair and an extremely muscular body. Running Bull, why are you here? Judge Hao recognized this young man and immediately went forward. After the youth called Ben Nyo landed, his gaze immediately fell on the 200 people behind Judge Hao. Then he looked at Mu Jia, Mo1, and Xiao Yingmeng with a puzzled expression. Hearing Judge Hao's words, the young man immediately regained his senses. His expression became serious as he said to Judge Hao, "Behind us is Su Qing, who is on the bronze ranking. Help me block him. You have more people, so if we work together, we might have a chance." The 11th on the bronze roll, Su Qing. Hearing this, Hao Bian's gaze immediately focused on the 8 figures that were rushing over from not far away. After that, his eyes narrowed into a line and were filled with excitement, as if he had won a prize. That's right. Su Qing, ranked 11th on the bronze leaderboard, help me fend them off. I owe you a favor. The youth called Benyu said to Judge Hao. If Judge Hao, Mu Jiejia, Xiao Yingmeng, Mo1 and the others joined in, they would indeed have a chance to resist Su Qing, who was ranked 11th on the bronze rankings. Judge Hao did not immediately return to Benyu. Instead, he looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Big brother, in front of us is Su Qing, ranked 11th on the bronze roll. Do you want to fight?" Du Xiaofu's eyes slightly raised as he looked at the 8 figures that had arrived in the sky in a few flashes. His lips curled into a smile as he raised his arm and shouted to the people behind him, "There is a group of people on the bronze roll in front of us. What do you guys say? Do you want to fight? Fight his grandmother. Martial Uncle Du, fight him." Wave after wave of cheers and shouts resounded through the sky. The emotions of the crowd surged, and all of them were inexplicably excited. This was especially true for the 120 inner sect disciples who had already fought with the first group of experts on the bronze roll yesterday. At this moment, they did not even put those experts on the bronze roll in their eyes. With Du Xiaofu around, they were not afraid at all. At this moment, hearing the excited shouts, the group called Benyu and the others were all dumbfounded. They all secretly wondered if those fellows had been provoked or had taken stimulants. Not only did they not hide when they saw the experts on the bronze roll, they even howled like a cat that had seen a mouse. The youth on the 8 bronze roll stood in the air with a puzzled gaze. A large group of newly promoted inner sect disciples had appeared in front of him. After hearing the shouts, he frowned slightly and revealed a puzzled expression. "Senior brother Su, something seems to be wrong. The auras of the 8 youths were extraordinary. A youth in a yellow robe asked the youth in front. The youth in front looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. His long hair was slightly curly and his eyebrows were long like willows. His body was like a jade tree and he was extremely extraordinary. His eyes looked at the group of newly promoted inner sect disciples in front of him as he frowned slightly. There were more than 200 newly promoted inner sect disciples and more than 100 of them had energy copper talismans in their badges. Although the 8 of them were experts on the bronze roll, they definitely did not have much chance of winning against 200 inner sect disciples. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. After dealing with the strongest few, it will be easy. The youth who was called Senior Brother Su had a slight smile on his face. After dealing with the strongest few, everything would be easy. After all, he could not just stand by and do nothing when he saw a bunch of rookies. 200 rookies was a great harvest. In the future, if news of the 8 of them dealing with 200 rookies spread out, it would be enough to make him proud. Alright, let's deal with the strongest few first. After suppressing them with all our might, it will be easy. Those rookies will not be able to overturn the heavens. Hearing Senior Brother Su's words, the 7 youths behind him smiled and nodded. They rubbed their palms together and were eager to give it a try. Let's go. Be careful of the talisman masters setting up talisman arrays. The youth with the surname Su lightly shouted. His profound chi surged and he immediately charged forward. Let's deal with the strongest first. At this moment, the youths behind him all rushed out. Waves of vast auras swept through the sky and filled the world with smoke. At this moment, the 8 of them did not know that their demons were about to begin. Everyone has been searching for a day and we've finally met a group. Let's do it. At the same time, Du Xiaofu looked at the group of excited inner sect disciples behind him and chuckled. The group of people on the bronze roll in front of him did not pose much of a threat. Charge! Instantly, all of the inner sect disciples rushed out in a frenzy under Du Xiaofu's wave of his arm. Waves of people rushed out, their profound chi surging, their practitioner weapons in hand, their energy condensed, shocking everyone to the core. Roar! Some of the experienced inner sect disciples immediately activated their meridian spirits. The enormous meridian spirits that blotted out the sky and covered the earth attacked the 8 people on the bronze roll. The roars of beasts shook the heavens. The runes were dazzling and the power trembled. Chi 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 chi, a large number of practitioner weapons were activated. Saber light, sword shadows, and spear light filled the air. The scene of 200 inner sect disciples attacking 8 people at the same time could only be described with imagination. The 8 youths on the bronze roll had a huge change in their expressions. They originally wanted to capture the leader first. Who knew that before they even started, their opponents had already made the first move? Hundreds of people pounced on them at the same time, making them tremble in fear. Rumble, in the blink of an eye, the attacks collided. In the dusky space, a blazing light blossomed. It was as if it wanted to light up the entire space. Boundless rune energy swept out and muffled thunder resounded. Everyone was fiercely fighting. Dozens of newly promoted inner sect disciples were attacking a single youth on the bronze roll. Furthermore, they were using practitioner weapons and meridian spirits. They would definitely not be at a disadvantage. And this kind of explosive attack made the battle extremely terrifying and intense. Damn it, let's teach these rookies a lesson. A young man in luxurious clothes shouted loudly as he swept his sleeve, causing talisman markings to erupt and monstrous profound energy to resound. Rumbling sounds resounded as it directly blasted a few people flying, and it caused a few of them to spit out blood. This youth in luxurious clothes was very strong. It seemed that he was only weaker than the leader, Su Qing. I'll deal with you. Judge Hao shouted. He carried a pair of large hammers and practitioner weapons and rolled down. He's very strong. Let's work together to suppress him. Mo Wen came to help. His long spear practitioner weapon swept out. Runes surged and a sharp aura swept out. Rumble. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had already aimed at the leader, Su Qing. The two of them had unknowingly clashed with each other at lightning speed. During the collision, the intense shockwaves caused the air to undulate like a vast ocean. Light swept out in all directions and flooded a large area. Dang dang, under the collision, they separated immediately. Su Qing's figure directly staggered back. His eyes were filled with shock. The purple-robed youth was actually not weaker than him. However, it was only a short moment of shock. Su Qing was an expert ranked 11th on the bronze roll. Regardless of battle techniques or strength, he was the best among his peers. He was definitely worthy of his reputation. He immediately attacked again. A king-level martial skill was displayed. It covered the sky and covered the earth around Du Xiaofu. Profound soul eyes. Sky-shaking wings. Heaven's net. Du Xiaofu attacked. He roared like a peerless ferocious beast. Under Du Xiaofu's profound soul eyes, sky-shaking wings, and the middle-grade Dao artifact, Heaven's net, Su Qing's final outcome was obvious. Su Qing, who was ranked 11th on the bronze roll, had just attacked and was directly met with a miserable end. On the ground, the 12 people called Ben Nyo were all stunned on the ground. As they stared at the astonishing battle in the sky, Ben Nyo and the rest felt as if they were in a dream. How was this a copper list practitioner robbing a newly promoted inner sect disciple? It was simply a group of newly promoted inner sect disciples beating up a copper list practitioner. Chapter 635. The eyes of Running Bull and the rest trembled, especially the purple-robed youth. He was extremely powerful, like a real ferocious beast in human form, looking down on everyone. After Su Qing was captured, the purple-robed young man directly charged into the battle circle. With an unstoppable force, he blasted the other two bronze list experts to the ground one after another, causing them to be unable to climb back up. A white-robed youth hurriedly activated his pulse spirit, which was a demonic beast on the heavenly beast list. But in the end, in front of the purple-robed young man, the beast spirit on the heavenly beast ranking was dispersed with a single slap. The white-robed young man's fate was also very miserable. Then, under Running Bull's trembling eyes, he saw the purple-robed youth severely injure 4 bronze list experts. Hao Guan and Mo Wen joined forces. 2 heroes suppressed them, and with the help of the Pulse Spirit Talisman weapon, they also severely injured an opponent. Xiao Yingmeng and Mu Jiejia, the 2 heroes, one used a talisman array, the other a talisman weapon, and their opponents were also restrained on the spot. The last 2 bronze roll elites were suppressed by the other inner sect disciples. With 100 inner sect disciples suppressing 1 bronze roll elite, no matter how strong that bronze roll elite was, he could not withstand such suppression. In the end, he was captured with hatred and was brutally ravaged. The last 2 bronze list youths wanted to cry, but no tears came out. They were 2 martial kings, but they were captured alive by a group of martial marquis realm cultivators. This was too humiliating. However, with over 200 aggressive martial marquis realm cultivators besieging them, they could only end up like this. That's Du Xiaofu, I saw him at the Sky Martial Square, the Du Xiaofu who defeated Yi Xian in 1 move. It's him, I heard that he's the new disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang. Behind Running Bull, someone recognized Du Xiaofu. He's Du Xiaofu. Running Bull was shocked. He did not go to the Sky Martial Square, but he heard about it. Therefore, he doubted Du Xiaofu's strength and did not believe the rumors. Huff huff, however, Running Bull could only suck in a breath of cold air. After the battle ended, the sky was already dark. Then, everyone skillfully looted the copper energy talismans. With Du Xiaofu and Judge Hao present, they were not afraid that the people on the bronze board would not obediently hand over the copper energy talismans. In the end, everyone divided the loot. A total of 1,100 copper energy talismans were found on the bodies of Su Qing and the other 8 people. Du Xiaofu took 200, while Mu Jiejia, Judge Hao, Mo Wen, and Xiao Yingmeng each took 80. Du Xiaofu distributed the remaining 700+ energy copper talismans to the 200+ inner sect disciples, giving each of them 3 talismans. As for Benyu and the others, they naturally didn't get a single one. They could only watch from the side as the others divided the energy copper talismans. In the hearts of Running Bull and the others, they never thought that the energy copper talismans of the disciples on the bronze board could be plundered by them. Du Xiaofu alone dealt with 4 experts on the bronze board, but only took 200 energy copper talismans. This made the 200 inner sect disciples support Du Xiaofu even more. In the end, Su Qing, who was ranked 11th on the bronze board, was released from the sky net by Du Xiaofu. However, his fate was exactly the same as Feng Yutang's. Within 7 days, he would not be able to use his profound qi. Running Bull and the other 12 people had been watching everything from the beginning to the end. These guys in front of them were like bandits, directly ravaging and robbing the experts on the bronze board. In the ancient heaven sect, this was something that they had never heard of in the giant rock spatial cave. Fatty, can you help me say that I want to join you? Running Bull quietly pulled Judge Hao, wanting to join the crowd. Okay, I'll help you, but you'll owe me a favor in the future. Judge Hao pretended to hesitate, then nodded. Okay, I'll owe you a favor. Running Bull clenched his teeth and nodded. According to his understanding of Judge Hao, owing this fatty a favor would definitely cost a lot. It would not be easy to repay it. Okay, leave it to me. Seeing Running Bull nod, Judge Hao smiled with satisfaction and patted his chest. In the end, Running Bull naturally joined the crowd as he wished, and he was extremely grateful to Judge Hao. From Judge Hao, Du Xiaofu learned that Running Bull's name was not Running Bull, but Shui Barbarian Bull. However, he did not know why Judge Hao called him Running Bull. Shui Barbarian Bull was not an ordinary person in the ancient heaven sect. He was also an outstanding talent, and his cultivation was at the Martial King realm. At night, everyone was healing their injuries. They did not hide at all. The first place did not need to hide, and was still looking for the people on the bronze board. In addition, there was no place for the 200 people to hide. Late at night, the space changed again. At this time, it was already the 5th day in the giant rock spatial cave. The gloomy space was gray. On the 5th day, the crowd expanded to more than 300 people, and they also met a group of people on the bronze board. It was a pity that the group of people on the bronze board was Feng Yutang, whom Du Xiaofu had robbed the day before. On the 5th day, the crowd did not have any harvest. Other than Feng Yutang's group, they did not meet any other people on the bronze board. It was only at dusk that the 300 people had no choice but to find a place to meditate and recuperate. Those who were injured continued to treat their wounds. Rocks were densely packed, and the mountain peaks were towering. In the dusky valley, dozens of figures with weak auras and miserable expressions stood quietly, not daring to speak. You were actually robbed by a group of rookies. You guys have really made the bronze board proud. An extremely handsome youth with a fair face, thick eyebrows, and a straight nose looked at the dozens of dejected and miserable-looking youths. He was just short of pointing at their noses and cursing. That Du Xiaofu is really too strong. He even gathered a group of rookies to besiege us. We were unable to resist. An extraordinary youth raised his head and looked at the fair-faced youth. His attitude was respectful, but it was not towards the youth in front of him. Instead, it was towards an elegant youth who had not spoken. Du Xiaofu is just a rookie. Does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? The fair-faced youth's face darkened. Su Qing, what do you think of Du Xiaofu's strength? The elegant youth turned around and asked the youth who had just spoken. He looked to be in his mid-20s. Even in the dusky space, one could faintly see his almost 3-dimensional facial features and his body exuded an elegant aura. The one who had just spoken was Su Qing, who had been robbed by Du Xiaofu and his group yesterday. When he heard the question, his expression became even more respectful. He replied to the elegant youth, that Du Xiaofu is indeed very strong. Spiritual soul attacks are very difficult to defend against. The Manchu's Skynet is also in his hands. Its defense is especially strong. I was defeated by him. It seems like that kid is even stronger than we imagined, the youth called Mo Chen said softly. After hesitating for a moment, Su Qing said to the elegant youth, as far as I know, it seems that our three groups are not the only ones who have been robbed. There are other groups as well. I reckon that they will also be robbed if they encounter them. The elegant youth raised his head indifferently. There was a slightly unrestrained smile on his handsome face as he said softly, I reckon that Du Xiaofu has heard the news and knows that the people on the bronze rankings are going to deal with him. That's why he wants to take us down one by one so that he won't be besieged on the giant rock plaza. He's quite clever. Senior brother Mo Chen, what should we do now? The fair-faced youth with thick eyebrows and a straight nose asked the elegant youth with a slightly solemn expression. Let's leave it to fate. Tomorrow is the 6th day anyway. We will eventually encounter him on the giant rock plaza. Ji Aoming and Si Ruofeng are outside. They are not people that he can deal with. The elegant man said in a low voice. On his handsome face, there was a confidence and indifference that should have been there in the first place. The dusky rocky canyon was like a huge python that was winding and coiling. Under the dim light, it left behind a faintly visible grayish-white mark. There were 8 people standing on the rocks in the canyon. 7 men and 1 woman. In the dim light, the woman leaned lazily against a rock on the mountain wall. The woman wore a long brocade dress with a light pink gauze cloak draped over her shoulders. A pink belt was tied around her waist, accentuating her well-proportioned figure. When she leaned slightly, it outlined a graceful, exquisite, and seductive curve. It does seem a little strange. Why are there fewer and fewer fellows on the bronze rankings? I haven't encountered a single group in a day. Even inner sect disciples rarely encounter them. The girl seemed to be thinking about something at this moment. She looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. Her eyes were bright, and her pupils were light purple. Her silky black hair casually fluttered around her slender waist. It added a kind of youthful enchanting charm that was enough to make people fall head over heels for her. Little senior sister, there are only 2 days left. With little senior sister's strength, it shouldn't be difficult for us to get out safely. A youth spoke. His gaze was deep and his temperament was imposing. He was not an ordinary person. The others aren't much of a threat. However, Si Ruofeng, Ji Aoming, and senior brother Mo Chen have to be careful. The woman's beautiful eyes twitched with worry. She muttered softly, if they join forces, it will be difficult. The giant rock plaza is the final battlefield. There are a total of 15 chapters. All of them can be considered as yesterday's outburst. Today is the first day of the new month. Little you, continue to work hard. On the first day of the month, naturally, I will be rolling around for the guaranteed fresh flowers. However, brothers, from now on, wait until the system refreshes the fresh flower rankings before you send any fresh flowers. Otherwise, the fresh flowers will be wasted and my heart will definitely ache. Readers who feel that little you is still hardworking, today's guaranteed fresh flowers will be left for little you. Thanks. Chapter 636. Early in the morning, the giant rock space was still gloomy. Phew! The white light around Du Xiaofu's body slowly receded, and an ancient aura dissipated in the air. Du Xiaofu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He opened his eyes, and a faint brilliance flickered in his eyes. Squinting his eyes, Du Xiaofu felt that the spiritual energy in his mind had become more condensed. His Naiwen Palace had also become more filled. In his Naiwen Palace, the talisman engravings on the spiritual energy ball were flickering. An ancient aura rippled and it was like a miniature star. Beside the spiritual energy ball, the desolate space ball slowly rotated. An ancient light rippled and released a boundless light. Ever since Du Xiaofu reached the level of a 6-star talisman master, he felt that his progress as a talisman master was not as fast as that of a 5-star talisman master. After all, the difference between a 6-star talisman master and a 5-star talisman master was huge. The energy required to break through was also 10 times more. Why can't I feel your cultivation aura when you just reached the level of a 6-star talisman master? Xiao Yingmeng's beautiful figure came to Du Xiaofu's side. Behind them, the people were still adjusting their breathing. Looking at the wild woman in front of him, the tight soft armor outlined her exquisite figure. Her slender legs were exposed and her bright eyes were sharp. She was like a female leopard. This made Du Xiaofu think of that tomboy, Ouyang Shuang. What are you looking at? Looking at Du Xiaofu's eyes staring at her, Xiao Yingmeng instantly took 2 steps back. Her hands subconsciously covered her chest. She did not know what that savage and shameless fellow was thinking of. I'm not looking at anything. Du Xiaofu helplessly glared at Xiao Yingmeng. Then, he stood up and answered Xiao Yingmeng's question. My cultivation is not high enough so you naturally can't see it. Your cultivation in martial arts is still low. Xiao Yingmeng couldn't help but glance at Du Xiaofu in disdain after hearing this. This shameless guy was able to defeat a profound martial king with 1 punch, yet he still dared to say that her cultivation was low. After looking at Du Xiaofu with disdain, Xiao Yingmeng raised her head slightly. Her face was extremely moving and could be called an absolute beauty. At this moment, she was also looking at Du Xiaofu with ripples of light. She said seriously, today is already the 6th day. Yes, it's the 6th day. Du Xiaofu said softly. He understood what Xiao Yingmeng meant. Tomorrow would be the 7th day, and the final 2 hours in the giant rock space might be the true battlefield. As for him, it would be even more troublesome. Other than Su Qing and Feng Yutang, we haven't met any of the top 9 fellows on the bronze leaderboard. If they all appear together in the giant rock space tomorrow, we will be in a lot of trouble. Xiao Yingmeng said. Keep looking. We'll deal with them when the time comes. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Du Xiaofu stretched his body. His joints crackled like firecrackers, filled with a feeling of power. Huff huff, behind the 2, auras began to awaken one after another. Soon, excited noises began to resound. Keep looking for those fellows on the giant rock space. Teach them a lesson. We're not to be trifled with. Whoosh 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 whoosh, a moment later, several figures appeared in the sky. Hundreds of figures covered the sky as their auras swept out and shook the space. In the vast gray space, there were endless mountains. It was desolate and majestic, and could be seen from far away. Between the mountains, there were 2 groups of figures meeting. They had identical badges on their shoulders, and they were all disciples of the ancient heaven sect. Among the 2 groups of people, the leaders were 2 women. Both sides had 8 people, and the atmosphere was tense. There was a girl on the left. She was elegant and had a heroic aura. She had a beautiful face, and her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were sparkling, and her eyes were like stars. The hibiscus-faced woman had a faint smile in her eyes. She looked at an 18 or 19-year-old woman in front of her and said, "Junior sister Muha, what a coincidence. I didn't expect us to meet." A young girl around the age of 18 or 19 was wearing a long brocade dress with a pinkish-white belt around her waist that drew out a graceful and alluring arc. Within her quick-witted eyes, her pupils were suffused with a faint purple color as she gazed at the heroic woman in front of her and the 5 women and 2 men behind her. She pursed her lips into a smile that was capable of toppling cities as she said, "Senior Sister Farong, do we need to compete? In my opinion, your group doesn't seem to be able to gain any advantage." The heroic woman raised her eyes and maintained a smile on her face. She looked at the 7 youths behind the 18 or 19-year-old girl in front of her, and her eyes darkened slightly. Then, she said, "Junior sister Muha, are you threatening senior sister? Do you really think that your team can contend against senior sister? Senior sister Farong, if you want to fight, I'll accompany you. It just so happens that I want to ask senior sister for advice." The woman in front of him was not afraid. She had a smile in her eyes and her silky black hair casually fluttered around her slender waist. This added a kind of youthful enchanting charm that was enough to captivate the hearts of men. Seeing that the other party was not afraid, the heroic woman seemed to have some misgivings. Although this junior sister had only recently returned to the Manchu, she had long heard of her talent and strength. With her junior sister's identity, she probably had a lot of trump cards. Once they fought, she really had no chance of winning. Moreover, this was her junior sister. A moment later, a faint smile appeared on the heroic woman's hibiscus face as she said, "Junior sister, then I won't stop you. I believe that you will meet senior brother Mo Chen. I also look forward to meeting senior brother Mo Chen, but I believe that senior brother Mo Chen might not be able to do anything to me at that time." The woman smiled. "All right, then let's part ways here. However, if we meet in the giant rock space tomorrow, don't blame senior sister for being impolite." The hibiscus woman smiled. "I won't be polite either. When the time comes, please don't take offense." The woman called Muha was still not afraid in the slightest. Her smile bloomed, adding to her cuteness. "At that time, I hope junior sister hasn't met senior brother Mo Chen in advance." As soon as the hibiscus woman finished speaking, she turned her head slightly and said to the 5 women and 2 men behind her, "Let's go." Everyone nodded and was about to leave. The tense atmosphere between the two sides slowly dissipated. Suddenly, at this moment, the hibiscus woman and the 18 or 19-year-old woman raised their heads to look at the sky in front of them at almost the same time, as if they had sensed something. Whoosh whoosh, asterisk at the same time, the 2 groups of people raised their heads to look at the sky in front of them. Rumble, in a short period of time, a rumbling sound came from the front of the calm space. The earth shook and the mountains shook as waves of aura spread over. Under the surprised gazes of these dozen or so people, hundreds of people flew over in a grandiose manner. Waves of aura swept out, covering the sky and covering the sun as it swept out in all directions. "It's the guy on the bronze board. Charge, fuck his grandma's bear. Don't let a single one of them go, charge." Amidst the mighty aura, shouts resounded in all directions. Before they even arrived, someone from the crowd that was sweeping over from all directions had already activated his pulse spirit. Roar, beast roars were like thunder as the pulse soul was activated. The pressure descended and rushed over. Symbol weapons were activated one after another. Dazzling light streaked across the sky and filled the sky. All of the attacks were aimed at the hibiscus woman and the other 8 experts on the bronze board. There was no mercy at all as the hundreds of people attacked with all their strength. Over 300 new inner sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect attacked together with all their strength. Furthermore, they attacked 8 people on the bronze board. This kind of vast scene was simply indescribable. Only by personally witnessing it could one understand how shocking it was. The 18 or 19-year-old woman and the other 8 people were stunned when they saw the scene in front of them. It was as if they were in a dream. "Not good, retreat, quick." The hibiscus woman seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. Over 300 new inner sect disciples covered the sky and covered the earth. There were only 8 of them. Even if they fought with all their might, both sides would suffer in the end. Looking at the aura of the 300 people, it was simply a matter of life and death. "Steal them all, steal them all." In front of the crowd, a purple-robed youth rushed out and howled. His entire body was covered in golden light, like a ferocious beast. "Suppress them with all your might. Let them know that we're not easy to bully. Don't let a single one of them go." A fatty was unwilling to be left behind. He waved the sledgehammer in his hand, causing runes to soar into the sky. It was very impressive. So satisfying, let's go. A sturdy youth followed closely behind the fatty. His aura was shocking, like a bull soaring through the sky. He was also howling and was very satisfied. Rumble, the hibiscus lady and the others were so shocked that they hurriedly retreated. However, they were immediately surrounded and attacked by the hundreds of people who were like bandits descending from the mountains. In an instant, muffled thunder-like sounds of energy resounded in all directions. Bang bang bang. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Runes soared into the sky and spread out. Terrifying energy waves swept in all directions. What the hell is going on? The 18 or 19-year-old woman and the others had already taken the opportunity to retreat. Looking at the hundreds of people who suddenly came down from the sky like bandits coming down from the mountains, they were astonished. They had no idea what was going on. After pulling 2 all-nighters in a row, I finally finished yesterday's update. Today, I slept until 8 o'clock at night, so I only finished the first chapter at 10 o'clock. I won't say much. Little you will be updating a lot today, but the time will have to be pushed back. I apologize to my brothers. Little you is working hard to write. Today is the first of the month, so I'll be rolling around begging for fresh flowers, recommendations, and everything. Still the same old saying, I won't be updating a lot. I'll be delaying the time of the update. Thank you for your care and understanding. Once again, I'll be rolling around begging for fresh flowers. Chapter 637. A chaotic battle suddenly broke out, and it was extremely violent. Maintain the defensive formation and break out of the encirclement first. The hibiscus-faced woman shouted in a delicate voice. Her white wrist shook as she waved her hand, causing talisman markings to surge out explosively. The profound energy within her beautiful figure surged into the sky, and some people were shaken to the point they spat out blood on the spot before their figures fell down from midair. The hibiscus girl was very powerful. Her cultivation base was at the mid-martial profound martial king realm. Compared to Feng Yutang and Su Qing, she was much more powerful. Despite being surrounded by a group of newly promoted inner sect disciples, they were unable to stop her. She's not weak. Suppress them all. A purple-robed young man appeared out of thin air and roared loudly. He took large strides towards the hibiscus woman and waved his hand. His 5 fingers were slightly bent, and a claw erupted with golden light as it grabbed towards the hibiscus woman. Where did this brat come from? Senior sister will teach you a lesson today. The hibiscus woman's face turned cold, and her black hair fluttered behind her back. She waved her hand, as if she had also felt that the purple-robed young man's aura was extremely powerful and domineering. The shadow of a huge python appeared in her hand. Hiss hiss. The mysterious runes on the giant python's shadow flickered. It was crystal clear and light danced in the air. It opened its bloody mouth and charged towards the purple-robed young man's claw print. How dare you disrespect your martial uncle? I'll suppress you. The purple-robed young man yelled loudly. His claw changed into a handprint, and waves of mysterious runes swept out. They seemed to have condensed into the wings of a rock. An overbearing and fierce aura swept out from his body like a volcano, and directly collided with the giant python's illusory body. Walala, the giant python's shadow's eyes were filled with fear when it was hit by the hand print. It seemed to have felt a great pressure. Then, it was smacked away. The terrifying energy swept out and many people in the surroundings were affected. They groaned and were sent flying by the aftershock. So strong. The hibiscus lady was shocked. The purple-robed young man was so strong and terrifying. Her wrist changed again and her hand moved unpredictably. She actually took the initiative to use a talisman longsword that was close to the level of a Dao artifact. Swish swish, the talisman weapon longsword flashed and a dense sword aura filled the air. It seemed as if it wanted to tear apart space as it directly enveloped the purple-robed youth. Martial uncle is not someone to be trifled with. Stormy waves palm. Oscillating fist. Profound soul eye. Have a taste of your martial uncle's heavenly net. The purple-robed youth was naturally Du Xiaofu. In the midst of the battle, he kept howling like a bandit. That hibiscus woman was indeed powerful, but Du Xiaofu relied on his terrifying defense, akin to a peerless beast, attacking ferociously. Under the profound soul eyes and heaven's net, the hibiscus woman's fate was exactly the same as Feng Yutang and Su Qing's. Suppress. Suppress. With the heaven's net binding the hibiscus woman, Du Xiaofu continued to rush into the battle. Every time he raised his hand, his attacks were monstrous. Several women ranked on the bronze ranking were mercilessly destroyed by Du Xiaofu, one after another, and fell from the sky. Who the hell is this guy? At this moment, the 18 or 19-year-old girl was shocked. That purple-robed youth was too terrifying. He did not show any mercy to women. Senior sister, he is Du Xiaofu. It is said that he is the new disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang. An extraordinary youth said to the girl. He had seen the purple-robed youth at the Heaven Martial Plaza. He was very shocked when he saw him defeat Yi Xian in one move. He is Du Xiaofu. Hearing this, the 18 or 19-year-old girl seriously sized up Du Xiaofu. She pouted and said, "That guy is really ungentlemanly. He does not show any mercy to women. He must have come from a barbaric land." Rumble. With Du Xiaofu joining the battle, his whole body was covered in golden light. He was like a peerless beast soaring through the sky. He ignored all the attacks and immediately heavily injured several bronze-ranking experts. In the end, under the joint attacks of Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Benyu, Mu Jiejia, and the others, as well as the suppression of several hundred people, the remaining bronze-ranking experts suffered miserable fates. After everything calmed down, several hundred people cried out, causing the 8 heavily injured bronze-ranking experts to have ugly expressions. Hand over the energy copper talismans. If you don't hand them over, tie the 2 men together. Look at each other affectionately. Du Xiaofu shouted loudly. At this moment, he was like a bandit leader, wailing loudly. Martial Uncle Du, what about the woman? An inner sect disciple asked. Among the 8 people, there were more women than men. There were 6 women, and all of them were beautiful and had extraordinary temperaments. Big brother, the leader is called by Fu Rong. She is ranked 8th on the bronze ranking. It is said that she is also one of the sect master's personal disciples. The fearless fatty was a little worried. The one being bound by the heaven's net was the sect master's disciple. Sect master's disciple, isn't that my martial niece? Du Xiaofu chuckled. Then he did not mind and cried out, those who do not hand over the energy copper talismans, the woman will be brought home to be your wife. Those who want a wife, bring her home yourself. Get a wife, get a wife. Immediately, the inner sect disciples cried out like wolves and tigers. To be able to bring home a woman ranked on the bronze ranking was definitely the dream of all of these inner sect disciples. But when these words fell into the ears of the female disciples on the bronze ranking, their beautiful faces turned pale. How could these female disciples dare to not hand over their copper energy talismans when they saw this large group of howling young men? Even their last copper energy talisman was handed over obediently, and all of them were plundered. Bai Fu Rong, ranked 8th on the bronze ranking, did not escape Du Xiaofu's robbery. In the end, her profound qi was sealed by Du Xiaofu. One by one, she could only leave in a sorry state. Eldest niece, goodbye. In the end, watching Bai Fu Rong and the others leave, Du Xiaofu could not help but warmly wave his hand. This nearly caused Bai Fu Rong to cough up blood in anger. After that, everyone began to divide the loot openly. Du Xiaofu naturally took more than the rest without holding back. Next was Judge Hao, Xiaoying Meng, and the others. This time, Ben Niu also obtained quite a few energy copper talismans. His face was full of smiles, and he was even more grateful to Judge Hao. In the end, everyone naturally obtained something, and they all cried out with laughter. Are these really inner sect disciples and not a group of bandits? The 18 or 19-year-old girl stared at the scene in front of her with her mouth agape. She was unable to recover for a long time. These guys were actually experts who had stolen the bronze ranking. Each of them looked like bandits. How could they be the dignified inner sect disciples of the ancient sky sect? As if feeling the gaze of the 18 or 19-year-old girl in the distance, Du Xiaofu looked at her after dividing the spoils and said, "Little girl, have you seen enough? What did you call me?" Hearing this, the woman immediately glared at Du Xiaofu with her light purple eyes on her alluring face. Du Xiaofu seemed to be even younger than her, yet he actually dared to call her a little girl. This was something that only his father and grandmother could call her. Elder brother, she can't be offended. Her name is Sima Muhan. She is the precious daughter of the sect master. No one in the Manchu dares to offend her. When Hao Bian saw the woman's beautiful face change color, his fat face also immediately changed color. He immediately reminded Du Xiaofu that this was the sect master's daughter, the apple of the sect master's eye. Even if he was not afraid of anything, he still did not dare to provoke her. The daughter of the sect master, isn't that my little niece? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu suddenly smiled and said loudly to Sima Muhan, "Little girl, no, little niece, I am your junior martial uncle. Is there anyone bullying you here? If there is, junior martial uncle will definitely help you vent your anger." Stinking brat, if I don't beat you until you look for your teeth on the ground, then my name is not Sima Muhan. Sima Muhan was angry. Her expression changed as she shouted. Then, her beautiful figure stomped the ground and flew into the sky. Her graceful figure was slender and peerless. Although she was still a little immature, she was already very attractive. Boom! At the same time, an ancient single-armed crossbow appeared in Sima Muhan's right hand. It was shaped like a dragon circling around and a phoenix spreading its wings. Runes flowed on the crossbow, and an ancient aura rippled endlessly. It caused the surrounding energy to riot and faintly resound with the sound of wind and thunder. Dao Artifact, Middle Rank Dao Artifact. Sensing the single-armed crossbow in Sima Muhan's hand, Du Xiaofu's expression changed. That crossbow was definitely not ordinary. Then, greed appeared in his clear eyes. A middle-rank Dao artifact was not cheap. Even if that wastrel Du Xiaoyao was here, he would definitely like to eat it. In a short instant, runes soared into the sky and profound qi surged. Dazzling light scattered across the sky like a rain of light. The ancient aura around Sima Muhan's body fluctuated, causing her graceful body to be wrapped in a holy light. On the crossbow, a light arrow directly shot towards Du Xiaofu. Qi! As the light arrow shot out, countless runes surged in all directions. The pressure shook the heavens and the earth, causing the hearts of the hundreds of inner sect disciples below to palpitate. What a fierce little niece! Only when Du Xiaofu felt the frightening pressure did he retract his greed. He did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. His expression changed slightly as a dazzling golden light burst out from his body. The dazzling golden light was like a golden sun as it enveloped Du Xiaofu's body, blocking the light arrow that had pierced through space and rapidly arrived before him. Let's see how you block it. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had actually blocked her arrow without using any external force, some ripples appeared in Sima Muhan's light purple eyes. Runes flashed and a second light arrow shot out from the crossbow. Rumble. Compared to the first arrow, the power of this arrow was many times stronger. Wherever it passed, space rumbled as if it was about to be pierced through. Du Xiaofu felt the pressure from the second arrow increase. His face slightly twitched as his aura surged. It was incomparably terrifying. Golden light soared into the sky from his body as he bathed in golden light. Then, a huge handprint shot out. Chapter 638. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu slapped out with one hand, and suddenly, layers upon layers of golden talisman patterns burst out, like the angry wings of a roc. Accompanied by the dazzling outline of the wings, it directly blocked the second arrow of light that Sima Muhan had activated. Walala, when the two collided, the dazzling light of the runes exploded. Everyone below was shocked. These two were too strong. One wing and one arrow shattered at the same time. Under the violent runes, Du Xiaofu's body was forced back a step. So strong. Du Xiaofu's expression changed. This little niece was too strong. She wasn't just strong. She was definitely the strongest opponent he had met in the giant rock space. Sima Muhan's delicate face was also moved. That stinking brat had actually blocked her second arrow with his bare hands. This made her very clear in her heart that this stinking brat was very strong. It was rare for her to meet an expert that could surprise her. Sima Muhan's heart also rippled. This brat seemed to give her a different feeling. Wang! The third light arrow had already condensed. Sima Muhan had shot out the third light arrow. Dazzling runes bloomed and wind and thunder rumbled. The third light arrow pierced through everything and directly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. When this light arrow appeared, Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Running Bull, Mo Wen, Mu Jiejia, and the other heroes' expressions all changed. Under the pressure of this arrow, they all felt great danger in their hearts. Du Xiaogang's eyes narrowed slightly. This little niece of his was too terrifying. With a wave of his hand, the heavenly net in his hand spread out. Runes erupted and expanded like a spiderweb. Runes crisscrossed in all directions, emitting dazzling light as they blocked the third light arrow. The two mid-grade Dao artifacts clashed. At this moment, there was a stalemate in the air. Dazzling runes exploded one after another. Under the terrifying aura, everyone below trembled. The two of them are so strong. Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, Running Bull, Judge Hao, Mo Wen, and the others were shocked and dumbfounded. At this moment, they truly felt how strong the two people in front of them were. Even as heroes, they were deeply shocked at this moment. Du Xiaofu, who is Du Xiaofu? Bastard, come out. At this moment, half of the sky where the runes exploded, a thunderous voice came from. The sound waves rolled and spread out. Du Xiaofu, who was fighting in the air, also raised his eyebrows. When he heard the loud voice, he knew that the person who had come was definitely not his friend. Sima Muhan's face. Her purple eyes, she bit her lips. The third lights. And the bow and the crossbow inzas. She looked at Du Xiaofu. Her, Sima Muhan looked. The Muhan Du Mu. Qi La. The heavenly net disappeared, and Du Xiaofu's expression became serious. A powerful aura spread out from the distance, causing Du Xiaofu to not answer Sima Muhan's words. In the air, he immediately looked forward. So, in the distant sky, the sound of rushing wind resounded. Numerous figures flashed and appeared in the sky above. Looking carefully, there were a total of 20 figures. The 10 figures in front were especially impressive. They stood there with extraordinary appearances. Each of them had a powerful aura, causing people's hearts to tremble. The ones in the back were by Fu Rong's team that had been robbed by Du Xiaofu not long ago. A young man in his mid-20s had an extremely ugly expression on his face. His white clothes outlined his sturdy and muscular body, and he wore a light green cloak, which added a bit of a free and easy temperament. His eyes swept over the people in front of him. In the end, the gaze of the young man in white clothes fell on Sima Muhan's body. There were quite a few fluctuations in his eyes. Then, as if he had sensed something, he also looked at Du Xiaofu and sized him up. Not good, it's that guy Si Ruofeng. Seeing the man in white clothes, whether it was Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, or the youths behind Sima Muhan, their expressions immediately became serious. Si Ruofeng. This name was definitely famous in the ancient Sky sect. It was even famous in the entire Central Plains. Si Ruofeng, ranked 3rd on the bronze rankings. Just this ranking alone was enough to explain everything about Si Ruofeng. The talent of a human king was rumored to be among the top 10 on the silver rankings. As if they had felt the terrifying and vast aura from Si Ruofeng's body, the hundreds of newly promoted inner sect disciples, who were originally shouting when they saw the bronze roll disciples, were now directly suppressed by the invisible pressure until their faces turned pale and their hearts trembled. Who is Du Xiaofu? Come out! Si Ruofeng shouted loudly. The light green cloak on his shoulders fluttered. His aura was extremely powerful. Speaking of which, Si Ruofeng had been searching for Du Xiaofu every day for the past few days. Not only had he not found him, but he had also heard that Du Xiaofu had not only trampled on the people on the bronze rankings in the giant rock space, but he had also robbed them of everything. And just now, Si Ruofeng had accidentally met Bai Fu Rong. From Bai Fu Rong's mouth, he found out that they had also been trampled on and robbed by Du Xiaofu. How could he endure it? He immediately chased after them. The anger in his heart could be imagined. Your martial uncle is here. Who is greeting you? Report your name. Du Xiaofu stepped out. Although he felt that the newcomer was extremely powerful, he could not lose in terms of aura. Good, good, good. Looking at the purple-robed youth who had stepped out, Si Ruofeng's eyes flashed with brilliance. A smile appeared in his eyes, and the light was fixed on Du Xiaofu. After a while, he repeatedly cheered. Then his gaze landed on Sima Muhan, and he said, Junior sister Sima Muhan, are you planning to join forces with that guy? Si Ruofeng, I have nothing to do with that stinking brat. You can do whatever you want. We are just watching the show. Sima Muhan shook her head, and a faint smile appeared on her face. She and the 7 people behind her automatically took a few steps back. Someone had come to find trouble with that stinking brat. Naturally, she was happy to watch the show. Alright, since junior sister Muhan is not with him, then let's just watch the show. Hearing this, Si Ruofeng seemed to be a little happy in his heart. It seemed that he was still a little afraid of Sima Muhan. Suddenly, he looked straight at Du Xiaofu and changed the topic. His expression darkened, and he said, You have quite the guts to injure the people of my copper list and steal the copper list's energy talisman. Remember me, Si Ruofeng. You will soon be very miserable. As the last word fell, Si Ruofeng's lips curled into a proud smile. He waved his hand behind him and said, Do it. Take care of this group of rookies. Rookies, your nightmare has arrived. As Si Ruofeng's voice fell, the 10 figures behind him suddenly fluctuated with profound energy. The figures seemed to have transformed into lightning, directly attacking the hundreds of new inner sect disciples below. Work together to resist. Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, Stampeding Bull and the others all shouted, and one figure after another rushed out to resist. Fight! Loud shouts resounded. Over 300 new inner sect disciples gathered together, and it wasn't that easy to deal with them. Furthermore, they had already formed a tacit understanding with each other over the past 2 days. Immediately, the new inner sect disciples attacked with all their strength. Dozens of people attacked the 10 copper list experts together. Si Ruofeng stepped into the air, his gaze fixed on Du Xiaofu. He didn't care about anything below, and his target was Du Xiaofu in front of him. To Si Ruofeng, Du Xiaofu had instantly defeated Yi Xian outside, which was an insult to them. In the giant rock space, Du Xiaofu had actually ravaged and robbed the copper list experts. This was a provocation to his copper list. If he didn't properly deal with this brat, he was afraid that the disciples on the copper list wouldn't have the face to leave their names in the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu focused. At this moment, he didn't have the time to intervene in other battles, because he could feel that Si Ruofeng was very powerful. Brat, let me see how powerful you are. As his voice fell, Si Ruofeng's figure flew out, his light green cloak fluttering with runes wrapped around it. He waved his hand, and a palm swept towards Du Xiaofu, accompanied by a large expanse of runes. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes. Amidst the golden light, he sent out a palm strike that easily dissipated Si Ruofeng's palm strike. Eh! Seeing that Du Xiaofu had actually blocked his palm attack so easily, Si Ruofeng was also extremely surprised. After that, the aura around his body surged wildly. All of a sudden, the aura of a martial king at the Nirvana realm swept out like a storm. Nirvana realm, martial king realm. Sima Muhan, who was watching from afar, felt the terrifying aura sweeping out from Si Ruofeng's body. Her light purple eyes were quietly moved. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes at this moment. Nirvana realm, martial king realm. The ancient heaven sect's inner sect disciples were probably different from ordinary Nirvana realm martial kings. Then, Du Xiaofu's face turned solemn. The golden qi in his body surged, and a golden light shrouded him. Although you're not weak, I'm afraid it's not enough in front of me. Si Ruofeng shouted loudly, and his figure rushed out like lightning. You'll know if you try. I'm not afraid of you. Du Xiaofu howled, and his figure rushed out like a peerless ferocious beast. Bang! 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 The two of them collided at the same strange speed. Every time they collided, there would be a series of muffled sounds. This was also an intense battle. Seeing this, Sima Muhan had to re-evaluate Du Xiaofu. Her light purple eyes were constantly rippling. In the battle between the two of them in mid-air, one stood proudly, and the other was like a peerless ferocious beast. Rumble. When the two of them collided from time to time, there would be bursts of dazzling light. The energy swept out, causing the surrounding mountains to collapse, and the ground below to crack. Si Ruofeng's attacks were swift and fierce. He had the style of a great family, and he was not an ordinary person. In the future, he would probably become a powerful person whose name would shake the entire Zhongzhou. Du Xiaofu was suppressed at this moment, but he was like a ferocious beast. Between his calmness and calmness, he seemed to be hiding something. Rolling on the ground for a guarantee of fresh flowers. Xiao Yu continues to write at 6 in the morning. Chapter 639. The scariest thing about a ferocious beast wasn't its initial attack, but its final attack. Si Ruofeng gradually retracted his arrogance. The Du Xiaofu in front of him was actually so powerful. No wonder he could defeat Yi Xian in seconds. Walala. Amidst the golden light, a pair of golden symbol wings began to form on Du Xiaofu's back. Regardless of whether it was his speed or his aura, they both rose to the peak. His overbearing and formidable aura caused one's heart to tremble. Boom! After a fierce collision, Du Xiaofu's aura increased tremendously. The golden rune wings opened and closed, suppressing everything. Dang dang! This collision caused both of them to retreat a few steps. A terrifying aura swept out in all directions. Si Ruofeng's expression changed. Du Xiaofu's attack was huge and ferocious. It gave him the feeling that he was in a fierce battle with a ferocious beast. You have some strength. Not bad. But now, let's end this. Si Ruofeng roared as the profound qi around his body surged, causing the originally gloomy space to darken. The sky shook, and the mysterious runes that appeared before him began to condense into a gigantic dragon. This was the manifestation of a beast's power. If one couldn't comprehend the beast's power to a certain level, they wouldn't be able to activate such a beast's power. Roar! The dragon's shadow roared. Its entire body was covered in blue light. Its aura was terrifying and it had an ancient aura. At this moment, the inner sect disciples who were engaged in a fierce battle were already affected by Du Xiaofu's golden rune wings. Now, with the appearance of the Jiao dragon's shadow, each and every one of their pulse spirits were greatly suppressed. Indigo heavenly dragon beast power. Sima Muhan's eyes rippled. The dragon's shadow was extraordinary. It was a demonic beast on the heavenly beast ranking. Its beast power was hard to comprehend. Roar roar. As the flood dragon roared, it swept out from Si Ruofeng's hand and suppressed Du Xiaofu. It was accompanied by a vast and mysterious aura that covered the sky and collapsed the sky. The dazzling runes contained a shocking pressure that caused the surrounding area to tremble. Rumble. The dragon's shadow swept over. Wherever it passed, the ground below would crumble. Gravel would shoot out and rocks would explode, turning into dust. Very powerful. Du Xiaofu's expression changed. His face was serious, but he wasn't afraid. The wings on his back, the dragons. Roar. Suddenly, the illusory Jiao dragon seemed to have sensed the aura of fear. It raised its head and roared, but it still swept towards Du Xiaofu under Si Ruofeng's control. The Jiao dragon soared into the sky, and its pressure rolled out. Rock 9 heavens, suppress. Du Xiao's rock's shadow was rocks rock world rock. The rocks rock rocks row rock roof row roses row his row roar. Rumble. S of Sha of you of Sha. Rune energy shot out like fireworks, causing the entire sky to be dazzling. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was like a giant peng descending. His domineering and terrifying aura filled the sky as he flapped his wings and swept across the sky. His movements were grand and domineering, and he suppressed everything as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. He directly crushed the illusory flood dragon. Roar. At this moment, the meridian spirit beast phantoms that were activated by the inner sect disciples in the surrounding sky were all under great pressure. They roared continuously and almost wanted to crawl and tremble. The pressure of the great golden-winged rock was something that all beasts could not resist. The aura of the golden-winged rock. Did he comprehend the beast energy of the golden-winged rock? Sima Muhan's light purple eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, his eyes were also filled with astonishment. At this moment, Sima Muhan could feel the aura of that brat. It was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. Si Ruofeng was astonished and seemed to be shocked again. His expression changed slightly, but his expression did not change much. The hand seals in his hands changed again, and his celestial chi gathered crazily in his palm. His right fist suddenly bloomed with radiance. At this moment, heaven and earth trembled, and the energy of heaven and earth in the surrounding was pouring into Si Ruofeng's fist. Under the pressure, the surrounding sky changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. King Grade Nirvana Realm Martial Technique, De Gang Qing Feng Seal. Sima Muhan's lilac eyes moved. Si Ruofeng was using the De Gang Qing Feng Seal, and she naturally knew the martial techniques of the ancient heaven sect. Using the De Gang Qing Feng Seal proved that Si Ruofeng was using his full strength. De Gang Qing Feng Seal. As soon as he shouted, Si Ruofeng rushed out. His figure swooped down, and the palm seal in his hand fell. It was like a huge wave, and the surrounding air was turbulent. The space waves were monstrous, and it suppressed Du Xiaofu forcefully. Ayo! It was also at this moment that a shout that sounded like the roar of a dragon or the cry of a divine elephant sounded out from Du Xiaofu's mouth, and it resounded through this gloomy and gray space. His violet robe fluttered, and with his body as the center, waves of spatial energy ceaselessly cracked and spread out from beneath his feet. In his clear eyes, a lightning-like radiance flickered. Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed, and the mysterious runes on the talisman bloomed, and it turned into a palm seal at lightning speed. Wang! A low hum like the sound of Sanskrit came from the palm seal, and it was accompanied by the mysterious runes that cut across the sky, and it went straight for the former. Boom! At this moment, the ground below rumbled, and the space trembled. The aura was overbearing, and the pressure was unparalleled. At that moment, Du Xiaofu was mobilizing the mysterious move. As his cultivation base grew stronger and his comprehension of it grew stronger, the power of the mysterious move also grew increasingly terrifying. Compared to the past, the power of the mysterious move could not be mentioned in the same breath. In the blink of an eye, the two palms collided heavily against each other. A muffled thunder-like sound of energy immediately resounded in this gloomy and overcast world. Rumble. A large number of runes shattered, and a terrifying energy ripple suddenly swept out like a stormy sea. The impact caused the surrounding mountains to shake, and countless boulders rolled down and shattered. Thud thud, Du Xiaofu's body staggered and fell from the terrifying wind. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, the golden rune wings on his back spun rapidly, and his feet landed on the ground, and he staggered a dozen steps back. Wherever his footsteps passed, the rocks under his footsteps turned into dust, and the surrounding rocks cracked and fell away. Puff! At this moment, there was a trace of pale golden blood flowing out from the corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth, and his face was pale. With the cultivation of a complete martial lord, Du Xiaofu was going against a Nirvana realm martial king like Si Ruofeng. Even if he relied on his abnormal defense and the increasingly powerful mysterious move, he would still be injured. This Si Ruofeng was just too powerful. Previously, Du Xiaofu was still able to fight back. Firstly, he had an abnormal defense. Secondly, the most important thing was that Du Xiaofu's golden winged rock technique had a lot of advantages. Ordinary beasts would be suppressed in front of Du Xiaofu's golden winged rock technique. Naturally, he had a lot of advantages. Thud thud. Du Xiaofu was at a disadvantage, and Si Ruofeng was not in a good state either. His body kept retreating, and he only managed to stabilize his body after retreating 100 feet. He then let out a muffled groan, and seemed to be at a disadvantage. That brat is only a complete martial lord. This time, Sima Muhan was really shocked. Just now, Du Xiaofu attacked with all his might, and he could no longer restrain his martial arts aura, revealing his cultivation of a complete martial lord. Sima Muhan was dumbfounded that a complete martial lord could go against Si Ruofeng, who was a Nirvana realm martial king. What a domineering martial skill! Si Ruofeng's eyes were filled with shock again. The domineering martial skill that Du Xiaofu had just executed was definitely something that he had never seen before. It was too powerful. Rumble. In the surrounding air, deep sonic booms continued to resound. There were a total of 12 extraordinary young men and women on the bronze roll. Although they were surrounded, the difference between a martial king and a martial lord was huge. It was hard for the newly promoted inner sect disciples to defend against them. Mu Jiejia, Benyu, Hao Guan, and Xiao Yingmeng each defended against a disciple on the bronze roll. However, the remaining 8 disciples were not something that ordinary newly promoted disciples could defend against. Although the combined forces of 300 newly promoted inner sect disciples would not result in an overwhelming defeat, nor would they be unable to withstand a single blow, figures continued to fall from midair. This sight caused Du Xiaofu's expression to turn increasingly solemn. Little niece, don't be a spectator. If I'm defeated by him, I can guarantee that you won't have a good time either. Even if Si Ruofeng doesn't attack you, you will be attacked from the back in the giant rock plaza. Help me, or else we'll be in trouble together. Du Xiaofu suddenly looked at Sima Muhan. Sima Muhan was very powerful. If they could work together, they could defeat Si Ruofeng. Brat, if you dare to call me niece again, I can guarantee that I'll help Si Ruofeng to teach you a lesson. Seeing that Du Xiaofu was at a disadvantage and still had the mood to take advantage of her, Sima Muhan's cheeks puffed up. Her lilac eyes were filled with hatred. Du Xiaofu raised his gaze and said to Sima Muhan, "As long as you help me, I won't call you niece anymore." Hearing this, Sima Muhan's eyes rippled. She looked around the battlefield as if she was considering something. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had started to instigate Sima Muhan, Si Ruofeng was very worried. This was because he knew that Sima Muhan wasn't easy to deal with. If the two of them worked together, he would be a little afraid. The main reason was that Si Ruofeng was very clear about Sima Muhan's talent. She was a monstrous existence. Brat, no one can help you. In order to prevent any changes, Si Ruofeng's figure pounced towards Du Xiaofu again. As he raised his hand, a rune energy pillar condensed from profound qi stirred up ripples in the air. It instantly suppressed Du Xiaofu. Continue to update. If you're done reading, please click on the Send a Fresh Flower button on the right. The free recommendation ticket every day is equally important. Thank you. Chapter 640. Heavenly Net. Du Xiaofu's heavenly net flew out. At this moment, he could only use the Dao artifact Heavenly Net to block Si Ruofeng. The heavenly net flew out and immediately turned into a dazzling rune net, blocking Si Ruofeng's attack. Middle grade Dao artifact, Heavenly Net. Si Ruofeng's eyes flickered. He seemed to recognize the Heavenly Net Dao artifact. His expression changed slightly. He raised his hand and a large knife appeared. Runes flashed, drawing in the energy of heaven and earth. It was actually a middle-grade spirit artifact. Brat, I'll help you, but you have to give me 200 energy copper talismans. After thinking for a while, Sima Muhan seemed to have made a decision. Earlier, she saw Du Xiaofu snatch at least 200 energy copper talismans from senior sister Bai Fu Rong and the others. She also wanted to get some benefits. She could not let that guy benefit alone. 100, Du Xiaofu howled. 200 energy copper talismans were too much. If he did not need that woman's help, he would not be willing to give up even one. 150, otherwise, you can slowly deal with Si Ruofeng yourself. Sima Muhan did not give up. Now that this guy needed her help, she naturally would not be polite with him. This could be considered a double cross. Okay, deal. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and used the heavenly net to block Si Ruofeng's attacks. At this moment, he was also retreating. He had no choice but to agree to Sima Muhan's request. Do it. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had gone out of his way, Sima Muhan's beautiful face also became a bit more focused. After waving her hand at the 7 extraordinary youths behind her, her graceful figure flew out, and the single-armed crossbow appeared in her hand once again. Whoosh! 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 3 beams of light shot out from behind Si Ruofeng. 3 energy storms swept through like a hurricane. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Giant rocks exploded and the ground cracked. Help! The 7 youths behind Sima Muhan were all extraordinary individuals. When they saw Sima Muhan's signal, they immediately flew out to assist the 300 newly promoted inner sect disciples who were currently engaged in an intense battle. Among the 7 people, there were 4 who had just reached the martial king realm. Judging from the oppressive aura on their bodies, they should be outstanding talents. Sensing the power of Sima Muhan's 3 light arrows, Si Ruofeng's expression turned grave. He had no choice but to give up on Du Xiaofu. Si Ruofeng immediately turned his head. 3 saber lights instantly swept out from the saber in his hand. They were accompanied by an incomparably sharp storm of aura as they blocked the 3 light arrows. The pressure on Du Xiaofu abruptly disappeared. The golden talisman wings on his back flapped and withdrew the heavenly net. Then, he immediately turned around and left. Brat, what are you doing? Sima Muhan shouted. When she saw Du Xiaofu's figure leaving, she thought that Du Xiaofu was going to escape. Hold him back for a while. I'll be right there. I'll leave him to you. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, he flapped his wings and flew out. He brought along an incomparably tyrannical aura. He was like a rock that flapped its wings and dived down. He had already rushed into the battlefield in the sky. Wherever he flapped his wings, a violent aura swept out and suppressed those who were ranked on the bronze ranking. Boom! With Du Xiaofu's intervention, those who were ranked on the bronze ranking were far inferior to Si Ruofeng. The strongest three seemed to be at the Martial King realm's mysterious beginner level. At this moment, under the suppression of Du Xiaofu, within a few rounds, the three strongest were severely injured by Du Xiaofu. "Brat, you win!" Sima Muhan shouted. That guy had actually left Si Ruofeng to her alone. She suddenly felt that she had been deceived. However, seeing that Du Xiaofu was actually going to help the other disciples under the premise that he was in trouble, Sima Muhan was also rather astonished. She secretly felt that although the bandit leader was savage, cunning, and despicable, he was quite loyal. Bang! An incomparably tyrannical aura swept out. After Du Xiaofu had severely injured another ranked on the bronze ranking, his figure left the battlefield. "If you don't come, I won't care anymore." Sima Muhan shouted, but her charming face was as calm as before. Extraordinary splendor appeared in her light purple eyes. The single-armed crossbow in her hand continuously shot out light arrows. After 3 energy light arrows were blocked by Si Ruofeng, 6 light arrows were shot out in succession. Swish swish, the 6 light arrows were shot out with blazing runes. One after another, the light arrows were shot towards Si Ruofeng like lightning, with layers of power stacked on top of each other. Si Ruofeng looked dignified as he condensed his hand seals. After a layer of celestial qi and a white armor condensed from mysterious runes covered his body, the blade radiance changed and turned into a blade radiance light shield. Layers of light shield floated in front of him, blocking the 6 light arrows. Rumble. The 6 light arrows collided with the blade radiance light shield. Layers of power exploded, and the blade radiance light shield cracked and shattered under the impact of the last light arrow. Si Ruofeng's figure was pushed back. The white armor of celestial qi runes on his body burst with light, resisting the pouring energy and the aftermath of the light arrow. However, his body was continuously pushed back in the process. If it wasn't for the white armor of celestial qi runes on his body, he would have suffered a lot. So strong. Du Xiaofu's figure came to Sima Muhan's side. The golden rune wings on his back had disappeared without him noticing. He was quite surprised. Sima Muhan's strength was as strong as before. She could actually push Si Ruofeng back in a head-on confrontation. At the same time that he was surprised, Du Xiaofu's face had already turned deathly pale at some point in time. He stood with his hands behind his back, but a smile appeared on his face. Swish! At the same time, Du Xiaofu's figure swept towards Si Ruofeng, who was retreating in front of him. A white divine light followed behind him, drawing in the energy of heaven and earth. Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, Sima Muhan was stunned. Si Ruofeng steadied his body and looked at Du Xiaofu rushing towards him. His face darkened slightly, and he condensed his hand seals again. "Too slow, it's my turn." A faint voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Then, he stretched out his hands behind his back. 22 array flags appeared in his palms, emitting astonishing fluctuations, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. Du Xiaofu did not waste any time. The 21 array flags in his hands immediately flew forward. Just a moment ago, when Sima Muhan was holding Si Ruofeng back and heavily injuring the 5 bronze roll rankers, Du Xiaofu was preparing to condense a symbol array. 22 array flags, a 6-star mysterious symbol array. Swish swish, 22 array flags instantly enveloped the space in front of him. Then, dazzling rune light pillars soared into the sky, immediately transforming into a powerful symbol array that enveloped the space. Coiling Dragon Array. Du Xiaofu lightly yelled. He had only recently comprehended the Coiling Dragon formation, a 6-star mysterious level attack formation. At this moment, he had just reached the level of a 6-star spiritual symbol master. There were probably not many people in the world who could set up a 6-star mysterious level formation. Rumble, the symbol array enveloped the space. Wind and clouds surged in the air. Under Du Xiaofu's early preparations, the symbol array successfully trapped Si Ruofeng within. The coiling dragon array was not a defensive symbol array, but an absolute attack symbol array. AOAO. As the symbol array was set up, there was a faint image of a giant dragon hovering above the symbol array. It was not easy to comprehend the coiling dragon array. First, one had to comprehend the energy of the dragons. Otherwise, one would not be able to comprehend the coiling dragon array. Puchi, after the symbol array was set up, Du Xiaofu's mouth once again overflowed with faint golden blood. His complexion became even paler. With his current cultivation, the difficulty of setting up a 6-star mysterious symbol array could be imagined. Sima Muhan stared at the symbol array. At this moment, she seemed to be nervous. She did not know if a 6-star mysterious symbol array could suppress Si Ruofeng. Be careful. A 6-star mysterious symbol array might not be able to trap Si Ruofeng. Sima Muhan then said to Du Xiaofu, who was retreating. She did not seem to have much hope for Du Xiaofu's 6-star beginner-level symbol array. I know it's hard to trap him, but it'll be enough to make him suffer. Du Xiaofu wiped the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. Si Ruofeng was a martial king at the Nirvana realm. He was also ranked 3rd on the ancient heaven sect's bronze list. In Du Xiaofu's heart, he did not think that his symbol array would be able to truly suppress and trap Si Ruofeng. Du Xiaofu's goal was only to make Si Ruofeng suffer. If he wanted to break his symbol array, it would be enough to exhaust Si Ruofeng. You've underestimated Si Ruofeng. He has the talent of a human king, and there's an awakened storm martial vein in his body. He's not easy to deal with. Sima Muhan's delicate face was still serious. She was very clear about Si Ruofeng's trump card and strength. If it was a 6-star Nirvana realm symbol array, it would be able to make Si Ruofeng suffer. However, a 6-star mysterious symbol array was still slightly inferior to Si Ruofeng. Rumble, as Sima Muhan's voice fell, the engravings on the coiling dragon symbol array's coiling dragon shadow began to dim. The entire giant symbol array also began to shake. Crack crack, then, cracks began to appear on the symbol array. There was a terrifying energy fluctuation that was about to explode. The symbol array seemed to be about to collapse at any time. At that moment, Du Xiaofu's face suddenly turned serious. His squinted eyes were extremely solemn. Rumble, the symbol array shook, and finally, it completely cracked and shattered. As the symbol array shattered, violent energy swept across the sky. The surrounding space trembled violently. The surrounding mountains were also swept and shattered, and the ground cracked continuously. Chapter 641. Do you think a 6-star mysterious talisman formation can trap me? Ha! His arrogant laughter resounded in all directions from the terrifying shattered talisman formation. In the sky, a terrifying storm swept out. The storm swept in all directions, causing sand and stones to fly. Si Ruofeng's figure came out from the storm. His eyes were filled with a deep and boundless color. His body emitted a majestic light. There were talisman patterns crisscrossing on the surface of his body. He looked extremely mysterious. What a strong pressure! At that moment, all the inner sect disciples were shocked. Even the elites couldn't help but gasp as they felt the pressure. At that moment, a huge pressure spread out from Si Ruofeng's body. It came from the depths of everyone's blood and soul. It made their hearts tremble and they wanted to crawl. What a strong pressure from the martial vein! Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. The pressure from Si Ruofeng's martial vein wasn't any weaker than Lu Kuan's immortal martial vein. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to fight against the pressure from the martial vein. This is the storm martial vein. Si Ruofeng is going to use his full strength. Sima Muhan's faint purple eyes became serious. Si Ruofeng came out from the storm. His boundless eyes looked down at Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. His body seemed to have merged with the storm. It was extremely terrifying. The surrounding sky had already changed color. The mountains and rivers shook. "Ha, do you think the two of you can do anything to us? However, to be able to force me to use my full strength, it is enough to prove that you are not weak. Now, it's time to end this." Si Ruofeng laughed loudly and shouted in the storm. Then, he condensed his hand and activated the storm martial vein. At the same time, he was also condensing the spirit of the vein. The mysterious runes of the talisman soared into the sky, and finally, a huge crane soared into the sky and roared out from the storm. Chirp chirp, it was a huge green-white feathered crane. It was as if it was alive. When it flapped its wings, it was as if it was going to shake the mountains and rivers. Heavenly beast list, heavenly white crane. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. That gigantic greenish-white feathered crane was a firmament white crane ranked on the heavenly beast list. Its ranking was even higher than the scarlet cloud dragon. In the middle of the storm, Si Ruofeng looked down at the white crane in the blue sky. His aura was rolling, and he was incomparably powerful. Third place on the bronze rankings was so terrifying. How about I deal with Si Ruofeng's main body, and you deal with his meridian spirit? Sima Muhan's delicate face froze. At this moment, Si Ruofeng's full strength made her a little fearful. No wonder her father told her that the guys on the bronze list were definitely not weak. No problem, leave it to me. Du Xiaofu nodded. Although Si Ruofeng was terrifying and had shocked Du Xiaofu, it was not to the point where Du Xiaofu was truly afraid. One had to know that Du Xiaofu had yet to use his true trump card. Neither Pulse Soul nor Baing had made a move yet. Let's end this. The bronze list is not something you can contend against. As his voice fell, the firmament white crane phantom meridian spirit flapped its wings and a rolling aura directly spread out. The surrounding space froze, and under the pressure, the surrounding meridian spirits were all trembling. Peng descends to the 9 heavens, suppress the evil beast. Du Xiaofu's figure swept out, golden light bursting out as he activated the Peng descends to the 9 heavens. It carried the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan and suppressed the firmament white crane like a supreme being. I've always wanted to see how extraordinary the storm martial vein is. Sima Muhan also moved. The ancient aura around her body fluctuated, and dazzling runes flew out like a rain of light, enveloping her body. At this moment, it was unknown what kind of trump cards Sima Muhan had used, but around her graceful and exquisite body, ancient runes flew out one after another. Ancient runes revolved around Sima Muhan. Light overflowed in all directions, and her aura was ancient and unhurried, causing her graceful body to appear exceptionally holy. Walala, Sima Muhan directly used the ancient runes that enveloped her body to collide with the storm vortex that enveloped Si Ruofeng. When the two collided, there wasn't much of a sonic boom, but only a vigorous and dazzling light. The light rippled continuously, spreading out a shocking aura. Suppress. Not far away, Du Xiaofu's golden light surged, and the wings on his back were wide open. A domineering and terrifying aura filled the sky. He flapped his wings and swept across the sky, suppressing everything with his powerful aura. Gee! The firmament white crane screeched, and the runes soared into the sky. However, it seemed to be naturally suppressed by the golden-winged rock's aura. Its eyes were filled with fear, but it relied on Si Ruofeng's power to resist. Rumble. The firmament white crane and Du Xiaofu's Peng descends to the 9 heavens contended, and a series of golden runes burst out in midair. The aura swept out, and the surrounding heaven and earth trembled. A large number of mountains shook, and the ground cracked and collapsed. Heaven's net has wide meshes, but nothing escapes. Suppress. Du Xiaofu made his move again, and the heavenly net turned into runes that covered the sky and earth. It spread out in the sky, and finally enveloped the huge firmament white crane. The peng descends to the 9 heavens and the heavenly net immediately suppressed the huge firmament white crane in midair. Under the golden runes, it was gradually suppressed until it couldn't move at all. The mysterious runes on the heavenly net tightly bound the firmament white crane's feathers. Gee, the firmament white crane screeched, but it couldn't escape at this time. Humph. Perhaps because the vain spirit was restrained, Si Ruofeng's muffled groan could be faintly heard from within the storm vortex. It seemed to be greatly affected because of this. Weng, Sima Muhan was pure and holy. She muttered some words, and she recited some unfamiliar runes. The unfamiliar runes were spat out from her mouth, and they turned into the sound of wind and thunder. Wave after wave of runes collided with the erupting vortex. At this moment, Sima Muhan was like an ancient goddess. She was untainted by the mortal world, and she was captivating all living things. The ancient unfamiliar runes constantly collided with the erupting vortex, and the aura was suffocating. Finally, the storm vortex began to loosen. It started to slow down, and the ancient unfamiliar runes finally condensed into an ancient energy hand. It directly tore apart the storm vortex, and Si Ruofeng's body was revealed. Bang! The ancient unfamiliar runes turned into a huge jade hand, and it directly slapped Si Ruofeng's body. It was as if it had fallen from the sky, moving and violent. Pfft! Si Ruofeng spat out blood, and the storm around him dissipated. His body fell from midair, and he crashed heavily on a mountain below. Rumble! Si Ruofeng's body crashed down, and he destroyed the mountain from the top to the middle of the mountain. The terrifying gravel swept out like a storm, and the huge rocks were crushed into fine powder. Dust flew everywhere. Gee! The white crane in the sky screeched. At this moment, its aura was getting weaker, and it was finally suppressed to the point where it couldn't move. The ancient runes around Sima Muhan's body disappeared. Her beautiful figure was moving, but at this moment, her moving face was also extremely pale. Si Ruofeng crawled out from the gravel pile, and the corner of his mouth was dripping with blood. His hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely miserable. He looked at Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, who were suppressing his pulse soul. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked dispirited and disappointed. You've lost. Hand over the energy copper runes on you, or I'll destroy your pulse soul. Du Xiaofu howled. On his pale face, there were bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. He curled up into a smile, and it made him look exceptionally ferocious at this moment. I've lost. Si Ruofeng said softly. His face was filled with disappointment and bitterness. He handed over all the energy copper runes on him in a desolate manner. The chaotic battle finally came to an end. Of the other 12 experts on the bronze list, Du Xiaofu had severely injured 5 of them. The remaining 7 were besieged by Hao Bian, Qiao Yingmeng, Beng Niu, and the other 9 talents, as well as more than 300 inner sect disciples. Although they had paid a price, they still managed to suppress the remaining 7. Since Si Ruofeng was robbed, the other 12 people were naturally no exception. They were all robbed clean. The overall ranking of these 12 people on the bronze leaderboard was much higher than the rankings of the previous teams that they had plundered. Therefore, they had more energy copper runes on them, especially Si Ruofeng. He had more than 800 energy copper runes on him, and no one knew where he got so many energy copper runes. In the end, the total amount of copper energy talismans looted from Si Ruofeng's team was close to 3,000. Du Xiaofu took advantage of the fact that Sima Muhan wasn't paying attention and put away half of the energy copper runes that Si Ruofeng handed over. Then Du Xiaofu gave each talent 90 copper runes. Among the 300 inner sect disciples, those who were severely injured were given 4 or 5 runes, while the rest were given 3 or 4 runes each. In the end, there were still 600 energy copper runes left. Du Xiaofu generously took out 150 energy copper runes and gave them to Sima Muhan. He said, 150 energy copper runes were your help. I'll give them to you now. I never owe anyone anything. Du Xiaofu, are you still going to make a move? Sima Muhan was angry. She glared at Du Xiaofu. She had worked hard to deal with Si Ruofeng, but this guy was only giving her 150. She wasn't stupid, so why would she agree? You are the beloved daughter of the sect leader. Don't tell me you don't have enough energy copper runes. Why are you robbing me? Don't glare at me. You said you would give me 150. Ah. Don't make a move. We'll split it half each. Chapter 642. Zhen Qingchun wakes up in the end. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to give 300 copper energy talismans to Sima Muhan. Only then was Sima Muhan satisfied. The 7 youths who came with Sima Muhan were all given copper energy talismans. The 4 heroes were also given the same amount as Judge Hao. They were all very happy. In the end, everyone supported each other and left. Only Si Ruofeng, Bai Fu Rong, and the others were left in shock. They couldn't regain their senses for a long time. Recuperate. Everyone recuperate. Tomorrow is the last day. Among the mountains, Du Xiaofu said to everyone on top of a tall mountain. After the battle with Si Ruofeng and the others, many of them were quite injured. Si Ruofeng is only 3rd on the bronze ranking. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Ji O Ming is 2nd on the heaven ranking. He is also a human king. He is slightly stronger than Si Ruofeng and harder to deal with. However, he shouldn't be much stronger than Si Ruofeng. But the scariest one is the 1st on the bronze ranking, Yin Machin. He is the hardest to deal with. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu frowned. Today, the 2 of them worked together to suppress Si Ruofeng. Sima Muhan even contributed more. This made Du Xiaofu worried that if he came tomorrow and suppressed Si Ruofeng today, Yin Machin, Ji O Ming, and the others would not give up so easily. Also, the 4th and 5th on the bronze ranking would definitely be very strong. What is Yin Machin's strength? After frowning for a while, Du Xiaofu asked Sima Muhan. Sima Muhan leaned against a rock lazily. Her slender legs were gently placed together, forming an extremely charming arc with the small extension that was not even enough to hold one's hand. She stuffed a pill into her mouth and said, he should be close to the peak of the Martial King realm. Even on the gold roll, he can be ranked within the top 10. He is also a human king heavenly talent. Martial King realm, Nirvana peak. Du Xiaofu's gaze flickered. That person's cultivation level seemed to be far from his. That person was Yin Machin, who was ranked 1st on the bronze ranking. He had the talent of a Ren Wang and was at the peak of the Nirvana realm in the Martial King realm. His strength was absolutely terrifying. It seemed to be too difficult to deal with him. I'll do some breathing exercises to recover first. Senior brother Mo Chen won't be easy to deal with tomorrow. After Sima Muhan finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, she sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. At this time, there would not be any danger nearby. Sima Muhan had already found out from Judge Hao's mouth that Du Xiaofu had robbed a total of 7 teams in addition to the 2 teams led by Si Ruofeng and senior sister Bai Fu Rong. Also, the day before yesterday, she had heavily injured the team that was ranked 6th on the bronze rankings. What remained were the 2 teams led by Ji O Ming and Yin Mo Chen. At this time, it was likely that the 2 teams would not be moving around. They would be waiting for the final battle at the Giant Rock Plaza tomorrow. Seeing Sima Muhan meditating, Du Xiaofu looked up at the sky and left. At the peak of the mountain, Du Xiaofu found a natural cave. Du Xiaofu formed a hand seal and set up a few seals before entering the cave. In the cave, the barren ancient space appeared. Du Xiaofu directly entered the barren ancient space. Within the misty space of the ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu stuffed a large amount of elixirs into his mouth and began to regulate his breathing. Dealing with Si Ruofeng had consumed a lot of his energy, and he had also suffered heavy injuries. Tomorrow, he would be facing Ji O-ming and Yin Mo Chen. This made it so that Du Xiaofu had no choice but to fight for time so that he could recover to his peak condition. Now, only the barren ancient space could buy him time. After an unknown amount of time, Du Xiaofu began to meditate. A small pagoda appeared in Du Xiaofu's bosom and emitted a faint light. Then, an illusory figure appeared in the misty space. Looking around, there was a slight surprise on his face. At dusk, the setting sun sprinkled golden light on the earth. The entire mountain range was covered in a cicada-like golden gauze, causing the vast mountain range to be covered in a faint sunset glow. In the familiar side hall, Protector Hao helplessly said to Sima Ta Xing with a stunned face, that kid really gathered a large group of disciples and robbed most of the disciples on the bronze list. Joining hands with Mu Ha, Si Ruofeng lost miserably and was also robbed. Now, I'm afraid that only Yin Mo Chen and Ji O-ming can deal with them. There are 99 people on the bronze list, and the only ones who can still fight are Yin Mo Chen and Ji O-ming's teams. Together, there are less than 20 people. It seems that kid really has some ability. I'm afraid he should have a talk with Martial Uncle Qing Yang. Sima Ta Xing said softly. A slight smile appeared on his handsome face. In the misty space, the time ratio here was 10 times that of the barren ancient space. Phew! A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his abdomen. His eyes slowly opened and a faint golden light flickered. Then, they became clear and deep. This is within the heavenly martial talisman realm, right? A familiar voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. Du Xiaofu suddenly turned around. In his eyes, a familiar illusory figure appeared. It seemed to have grown up a little and was already 17 or 18 years old. However, the wretched expression in his eyes did not change much. Brother Qing Chun. Du Xiaofu immediately stood up in excitement. Who else could the illusory figure in front of him be other than Jin Qing Chun? What's wrong with you? You seem to have consumed a lot of energy and are still injured. Are you in trouble? Zhen Qingchun raised his eyebrows. In his inverted triangular eyes, his gaze was still as wretched as ever. Ever since he had taken the profound God pill, Zhen Qingchun had been in a deep sleep in the small pagoda. This period of time was not short. It's a long story. Too many things have happened while you were recovering. Du Xiaofu's expression gradually dimmed. Then, he told Zhen Qingchun about the destruction of the Du family in the imperial capital, the destruction of the Tianwu Academy, his obtaining of the barren ancient space, the establishment of the World Alliance, the disappearance of Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and the little tiger. Finally, he had entered the ancient heaven sect. I didn't expect so many things to happen during this period of time. Hearing this, Zhen Qingchun sighed. Too many things had happened during this period of time. After a while, Zhen Qingchun's eyebrows twitched and he said to Du Xiaofu, "It's not a bad idea for you to join the ancient heaven sect now. It's one of the top forces in the middle continent and has a strong foundation. It should be able to help you improve in the future." I'm in trouble right now. Du Xiaofu sighed. Afterwards, he roughly told Zhen Qingchun about what had happened in the giant rock space. He said, "I don't know how I offended those fellows on the bronze ranking. They actually want to deal with me. Why am I so wronged? Is it because my character is bad? Your character is bad? You've almost taken all the good things in the world." Zhen Qingchun could not help but roll his eyes at Du Xiaofu. This guy had the golden-winged rock technique, the ancient desolate space, the mysterious incomplete technique, the mysterious martial vein, and so on. Any one of these was a treasure that others could only dream of. However, he had all of them. His character was off the charts. After glaring at Du Xiaofu, Zhen Qingchun's eyes twitched. He said, "You just said that in this giant rock space, there are 2 human kings of the martial king realm at the Nirvana realm who should be looking for trouble with you. However, they only have 2 hours. That's right. Originally, I wouldn't be afraid of 2 human kings of the martial king realm at the Nirvana realm. If we really fight, it's not certain who will emerge victorious. However, the problem is that I can't risk my life. There are some things that I don't want to expose too early. Du Xiaofu was depressed. Even if Yin Machun and Ji Aoming were looking for trouble with him, it was still a competition between disciples of the same sect. Moreover, this was the Manchu's assessment. He could not risk his life with them. It would be fine if he risked his life. Du Xiaofu thought of the trump cards he had and was not afraid of the 2 of them. The problem was that he was not risking his life now. Moreover, his physical strength was indeed not as good as Yin Machun and Ji Aoming. If he encountered them, he would definitely be trampled. Brother Qing Chun, how's your recovery going? Why don't you lend me a hand? Du Xiaofu looked at Jin Qing Chun. At this moment, he felt that Jin Qingchuan's illusory body was becoming more and more solid. His aura was also getting stronger. He was afraid that Jin Qingchun must have recovered a lot during this period of time in the mysterious small pagoda. Do you think that there won't be experts from the ancient heaven sect spying on us in the giant rock space? I'm afraid that once I make a move, someone will discover my existence. If I were at my peak, I wouldn't be afraid. However, with my current condition, I can't afford to offend the ancient heaven sect. Jin Qingchun rolled his eyes at Du Xiaofu. After pondering for a while, he said to Du Xiaofu, I have an idea. With your current spiritual strength, there should be hope. What idea? Du Xiaofu heard this and immediately became interested. It's just stalling for time. It's not like we have to make a move. It's not impossible to do it in 2 hours. Zhen Qingchuan's wretched eyes revealed a slight smile as he said, however, in the end, it will depend on your own ability. If you don't have the ability, don't blame me when the time comes. It's good that you have an idea. No matter what, I have to give it a try. Du Xiaofu nodded. How could he not try if there was an idea? After all, he couldn't be trampled on by the guy on the bronze list tomorrow. Rumble, in the giant rock space, at midnight, the space changed again. After a few days, everyone in the giant rock space was no longer surprised by this change. Chapter 643. The next morning, on the mountain peak, many auras woke up and many of them had serious gazes. Today was the last day and the last 2 hours on the giant rock plaza. For everyone, it might be a test. Time slowly passed. On the mountain peak, everyone was waiting for the purple-robed youth to appear. What is this guy doing? He even set up a symbol array. Doesn't he know that today is the 7th day? On the mountain peak, Sima Muhan curled her lips and glared at the symbol array on the mountain peak. Judge Hao, Xiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Running Bull, Mu Jiejia, and the others were all waiting at the side. Swish, after an unknown period of time, when it was almost dusk, the talisman array on the mountain peak began to fluctuate. Then, the familiar purple-robed young man appeared. His face, which was still very pale yesterday, was now rosy. He recovered so quickly. That's too abnormal. Feeling the aura on Du Xiaofu's body, Sima Muhan's eyes secretly flashed with surprise. Then, she stared at Du Xiaofu and pouted, we should be reaching the giant rock plaza soon. Do you have any plans? No, we'll deal with whatever comes our way. Du Xiaofu smiled. It's okay. I think senior brother Mo Chen and Ji O Ming are most interested in you. I'm not in a hurry. Sima Muhan curled her lips and turned to leave, leaving Du Xiaofu stunned. He immediately chased after her and said, I say, little niece no, little sister Muhan, let's discuss this. Yesterday, you also dealt with Si Ruofeng. I'm afraid that Yin Machun and the others won't let you go. We're actually still on the same boat. The vast plaza was surrounded by rocks in the distance. It was like a forest of rocks. The space was desolate, and the vast stone plaza was covered with small rocks that were scattered all over the place. In the middle of the plaza, there was a huge rock. At this moment, there were many young men and women gathered around the rock. There were no less than 70 to 80 people. This group of young men and women were dressed in extraordinary clothes. Every one of them had an identical badge on their shoulders. However, at this moment, there were 50 or so people whose badges were dim. This proved that there was not a single energy copper symbol inside. These 50 or 60 people's faces were also extremely gloomy. They all lowered their heads, looking extremely helpless and dispirited. In the middle of the rocks, there were 20 or so young men and women. Their badges were all bright and their eyes were sparkling. Looking at the dozens of badges around them were dim and they were all covered in wounds. Wounds. I didn't expect our bronze roll to suffer such a heavy loss this time. Not only did we severely injure so many people, we were also robbed clean. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid our bronze roll this time will be famous in the sect. In front of the crowd, a young man dressed in a green and red satin robe stood tall and straight. His facial features were extremely distinct, and a few strands of long black hair fluttered in the wind. He had an extraordinary temperament. His eyebrows moved slightly as he whispered to a handsome young man beside him, "Du Xiaofu, are you going to make a move or should I?" Before the exit of the heavy rock space opens, the bronze ranking is still the bronze ranking. Nothing can be changed. The handsome young man stood there quietly. His facial features were as three-dimensional and handsome as if they were carved by a knife. His entire person exuded an elegant and untainted aura. He looked at the stone plaza in front of him and said softly, "Leave Du Xiaofu to me. Junior sister Muhan is also here." "All right, I'll leave Du Xiaofu to you," the man in the green and red satin robe said. "All right, it's been 2 hours. They should all be out." Suddenly, the handsome man's handsome face revealed a slightly unrestrained smile as he looked towards the stone forest in front of him. Chi, there was silence in the stone forest. Following which, many footsteps could be heard. Everyone around the stone plaza raised their heads and looked over. They saw no less than 20 figures slowly walking over from the left. All of them had their heads lowered and their auras were extremely weak. It's Bai Fu Rong, Si Rua Feng and the rest. Around the stone plaza, there were people who immediately recognized the newcomers. Following which, they were stunned. They don't seem to be right. Why are all of them so weak and miserable? Could it be, seeing the auras and expressions of Si Rua Feng, Bai Fu Rong and the rest, everyone was stunned. Doubt flashed across their hearts as their gazes landed firmly on Si Rua Feng, Bai Fu Rong and the rest. Si Rua Feng and the rest walked slowly. Their footsteps appeared to be rather heavy. After a while, they arrived in front of the stone in the middle of the plaza. The handsome and elegant young man and the man in the green and red satin robe also looked at Si Rua Feng alone. Was it also done by Du Xiaofu? The man in the green and red satin robe felt Si Ruofeng's aura. It was clear that he was severely injured. Finally, some fluctuations appeared in his eyes. Du Xiaofu and junior sister Muhan have teamed up. Si Ruofeng raised his head slightly. His weak gaze landed on the man in the green and red satin robe and the handsome young man. He said, "But I feel that Du Xiaofu and junior sister Muhan have not used their full strength. They are both very strong." Hearing Si Ruofeng's words, the gazes around the stone trembled. Even Si Ruofeng had been defeated. That was the third on the bronze list, a human sovereign talent. If even he had been defeated, then Du Xiaofu was too terrifying. Suddenly, many people felt a little better in their hearts. Thinking about it, even Si Ruofeng, who had the talent of a human king, had been defeated by Du Xiaofu and had been robbed clean. It was natural that they had been robbed clean. Could it be that the newly promoted inner sect disciples this time are all so powerful? Many young men and women behind the man in the green and red satin robe frowned slightly at this moment. Their eyes were a little dazed. It's about time. They should be here soon. Next, let me see what's so special about Du Xiaofu. The handsome and elegant young man said softly. He stretched lazily and a smile appeared on his face. This caused ripples to appear in the eyes of several girls around him. Rumble, just as the handsome young man's voice fell, many rumbling sounds came from the surrounding stone forest. It's here. It's finally the last 2 hours. The young man in the green and red satin robe said softly. The aura around him rippled slightly and waves of aura silently spread out in the air. On the square, many gazes immediately scattered in all directions. Under the gazes of the crowd, a moment later, in the surrounding stone forest, there were waves of people surging and figures flashing. A moment later, some figures appeared at the edge of the square. More and more figures appeared. Groups after groups appeared, but their auras were weak and they looked extremely miserable. The badges on their bodies were dim. Swoosh swoosh, figures began to fly out from the stone forest. Groups of people directly appeared in the square. The leader of the group was a handsome young man in a black robe. His features were distinct, and his pure black eyes were as black as the endless abyss at the end of the universe. Behind the young man in a black robe, there was an outstanding young man with a slightly arrogant look in his eyes. Beside him, there were more than 20 extraordinary young men and women. The badges on their shoulders were still shining, proving that the energy copper talismans were still intact. In the past 7 days, they had managed to avoid being robbed by the people on the bronze list. Swoosh swoosh. A moment later, another 30 people landed. The leader was a young man in a scholarly robe. He was tall and slender, and his eyes were clear. The badges on the shoulders of these 30 people were also shining. The energy copper talismans were also intact in the badges on their bodies. Swoosh swoosh. Almost immediately after these 30 people, more than 20 extraordinary young men and women arrived. The leader was a burly young man who looked to be around 22 or 23 years old. He wore a light golden battle robe and had an imposing appearance. The badges on these 30 people were also shining. So far, they had managed to keep the energy copper talismans on their bodies. Swoosh swoosh. In the air on the right, more than 10 figures flew over. The leader was a young man who looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. He wore a clear blue robe, and under his sword-like eyebrows, his long and narrow eyes were like gurgling spring water. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised. His figure landed and looked around. The young man in a black robe, the young man in a scholarly robe, the young man in a light golden battle robe, and the young man in a blue robe landed. They looked at the people on the bronze list in the middle of the square. Their expressions changed at the same time, as if they were facing a great enemy. After that, the 4 of them subconsciously huddled together, guarding against the people on the bronze board who would make a move. There were more and more people on the square. In a short period of time, there were more than 500 people gathered. When these young men and women appeared on the square, they gradually gathered together subconsciously. With the young man in a black robe, the young man in a scholarly robe, the young man in a light golden battle robe, and the young man in a blue robe as the leaders, the rest of the people gathered behind the 4 of them. Rumble, suddenly, in front of them, there was a loud noise. The sound of rocks rolling could be heard from the rocky forest. Then, a large number of people came out. Looking from afar, there were at least a few hundred people. They gradually appeared in everyone's line of sight. It should be Du Xiaofu. The handsome and elegant young man glanced at the young man in a black robe, the young man in a blue robe, and the 4 others. Then, he landed in front of them and said softly, to be able to gather so many people, he's quite capable. It's really not bad. He's quite capable. The young man in a satin robe did not refute the handsome young man's words. He knew very well that those who were able to become inner sect disciples of the Manchu all had their own pride. They were all geniuses in the outside world. To gather these arrogant fellows together and lead them, there were not many people who could do it. Sometimes, this kind of ability could not be achieved purely by strength. A person's charisma and leadership would play a role in this. Chapter 644. Hundreds of figures arrived in a grandiose manner. They were all escorting the dozen or so extraordinary ones in front of them. In front of the dozen or so extraordinary ones, especially the man and woman at the front, they attracted the attention of everyone for no reason. The man wore a purple robe and looked resolute and sharp. The most eye-catching thing about him was that he always seemed to be carrying a broadsword wrapped in purple cloth on his shoulder. The woman's beauty was captivating. Her figure was graceful and she looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. She wore a long brocade dress with a white belt around her waist, outlining a graceful and alluring curve. When they heard the voices of the man and woman, the expressions of the newly promoted inner sect disciples and the disciples on the bronze ranking changed. Boss, the four fellows in front, including Su Chuyun, are the four human kings among the newly promoted inner sect disciples. Other than Su Chuyun, the one in black is called Feng Xiangyu. He seems to be from the 8th district. You were the one who took the champion of the 8th district. Otherwise, it would have been him. The one in the light golden battle robe is called Shu Yang and the one in scholarly robes is called Shi Yunsheng. Hao Bian's voice sounded in Du Xiaofu's ears. Following Hao Bian's gaze, Du Xiaofu saw Su Chuyun in front of the hundreds of newly promoted inner sect disciples who had their bronze energy talismans stolen. Beside her were 3 other extraordinary ones who were also human king gifted talents. This made Du Xiaofu feel strange. It was said that there were 4 human king gifted talents among the newly promoted inner sect disciples. Originally, Du Xiaofu thought that Sima Muhan was one of them. He didn't expect that Sima Muhan wasn't one of the 4 human king gifted talents. Be careful. Do you see the 2 fellows in front? One is called Ji Aoming and the other is called Yin Machin. They are ranked 2nd and 1st on the bronze ranking respectively. They are very strong. Sima Muhan walked towards the square slowly. Her bright eyes glowed with a faint purple light. She looked at the handsome young man who was standing quietly in front of her with a solemn expression. Walking onto the square, Du Xiaofu stood straight and followed Sima Muhan's gaze to the figures around the rock in the center of the square. Many of these figures were extremely familiar to Du Xiaofu. Finally, his gaze landed on the man in satin robes and the handsome and elegant young man at the front. So strong. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled when his gaze landed on the 2 youths. There was clearly no aura rippling from the 2 of them, but one would be affected by them just by looking at them. Such cultivation was extremely frightening. Are they Yin Machin and Ji Aoming? Du Xiaofu couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. Then, his eyes turned, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, when many gazes landed on Du Xiaofu, it was definitely extremely ugly. Thinking of that hateful and shameless brat, many people were cursing in their hearts. However, there was still lingering fear in their eyes and hearts. Sima Muhan walked out. Her steps were light, and her body was graceful. Although there was still a faint immaturity, she was already very attractive. Looking at the handsome and elegant youth on the rock, she pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was enough to topple a city. Senior brother Mo Chen, it's the last 2 hours. Can you pretend that you didn't see me? I don't want to fight with you. The handsome and elegant youth looked at Sima Muhan, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He said softly, Sima Muhan, Master has already told me, so I can't pretend that I didn't see you. However, since you've spoken, I will naturally listen to you. I won't fight with you. Thank you, Senior brother Mo Chen. I knew you were the best to me. Sima Muhan's face was full of smiles. He glanced sideways at Du Xiaofu and made a face, as if he was proudly demonstrating his power. I won't fight with you, but Ji Ming will. I have someone else who wants to fight. Yin Mo Chen's indifferent voice fell. His voice was extremely calm, as though there were no ripples. However, hearing Yin Mo Chen's words, Sima Muhan's beautiful face immediately turned ugly. She fiercely glared at Yin Mo Chen. Ha, your senior brother Mo Chen is really good to you. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu also bent over with laughter. This action immediately attracted Sima Muhan's hateful gaze. Before Du Xiaofu's laughter fell, Yin Mo Chen slightly raised his head. On his handsome face, he looked at Du Xiaofu. Sweeping his gaze across by Fu Rong, Feng Yutang, Su Qing and the others, he asked, "It was all done by you, right?" "I was tricked." Du Xiaofu spread his hands. At this moment, his expression was extremely helpless. If he did not know that the people on the bronze list wanted to deal with him, he would not have caused trouble for these people on the bronze list. "I understand you. To be honest, if I were you, I would strike first to gain the upper hand and strike second to suffer. I would definitely do the same." Yin Machin nodded and seemed to approve of Du Xiaofu's actions. He said, "However, there are some things that we have different standpoints. It is difficult to say who is right or wrong. Generally, it is just a matter of different standpoints. From your standpoint, it is natural for you to strike first and gain the upper hand." After pausing for a moment, Yin Mo Chen continued to look at Du Xiaofu and said, "However, I also have my own perspective. As someone on the bronze list, I must protect everything on the bronze list. I will not make things difficult for others. I will represent the bronze list, and you will represent all the rookies. Let's fight. If I lose, the remaining energy copper talismans of everyone on the bronze list will be given to you. But if you lose, the energy copper talismans of all the rookies will be given to me. How about that?" Hearing Yin Mo Chen's words, the surrounding people's expressions changed. No one on the bronze list reacted strangely. Instead, there was quite a bit of commotion among the inner sect disciples. Yin Mo Chen is first on the bronze list. Du Xiaofu is no match for him. When the time comes, our energy copper talismans will also be lost. If Yin Mo Chen attacks Du Xiaofu, won't we lose for sure? In the crowd, Su Chuyun's long and narrow eyes glanced sideways at Du Xiaofu. Then, she raised her head and said respectfully to Yin Mo Chen, "Senior brother Yin, Du Xiaofu does not have the right to represent all of us. He is not qualified to represent us." After Yin Machin indifferently glanced at Su Chuyun, he said, "If even he isn't qualified, then you are even less qualified. Sometimes, a human king's talent is an aid, an opportunity, and a blessing to cultivators. But sometimes, it is also a disaster to cultivators. It is also a restriction. Don't think that just because you have a human king's talent, you are amazing. Wholeheartedly cultivating is the way of the king." Hearing Yin Mo Chen's words, Su Chuyun's face immediately turned green and white. She was extremely embarrassed. But in front of Yin Mo Chen, Su Chuyun did not dare to say anything. She only lowered her head slightly and looked at Du Xiaofu, who was not far away, from her side. Her expression became even gloomier. "Martial Uncle Du, we support you." Behind Du Xiaofu, a series of cheers rang out. They were all cheers of support. "Okay, less idle chatter. Let's do it." Ji Aoming, who was wearing a satin shirt, slowly walked down the rock. She looked at Sima Muhan and said, "Junior sister Sima Muhan, I heard that you are not ordinary. Let's do it. Since you insist on doing it, then do it." Sima Muhan's expression was fearless after taking a deep breath. Her pale purple eyes even rippled with a smile as she slowly walked forward. The silk-like black hair on her back randomly scattered around her slender waist, adding a kind of youthful enchanting charm, causing quite a number of young men around the giant rock plaza to be captivated by her. "Junior sister Muhan, then I won't be polite. For the sake of the bronze board, I can only suppress you. As his voice fell, Ji Aoming's aura suddenly erupted, causing the surrounding space to suddenly tremble. It was as if the entire space was about to be overturned. Then, his figure was like lightning, directly crossing the plaza. His attacks were fierce and fierce. His every movement was filled with a terrifying aura. A powerful claw print directly grabbed Sima Muhan. Ji Aoming made his move. His aura shook the mountains and rivers. There was a strong force in his fierceness. Wherever the claw print passed, it seemed as if it wanted to tear the space apart. Sima Muhan's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Her delicate hands moved, and waves of talisman runes converged, transforming into a fist that directly collided with a claw print that had arrived in front of Sima Muhan in a flash. Boom! The two collided, bursting out a series of dazzling rune lights. It was like fireworks being released in the sky above the giant rock plaza. The energy and aura pressure spread out. Those with lower strength could only tremble. It's our turn now. You go first. No matter who wins or loses, I'll treat you to a drink. I, Yin Machin, want to make friends with you. As Yin Machin's voice fell, a faint aura began to ripple out from his body. There was a powerful aura that had yet to erupt from his body, but that aura had already begun to rise within his body. As this aura spread out, those with lower strength in the surroundings already felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. Feeling the aura spreading out from Yin Machin's body, Du Xiaofu's face turned slightly solemn. No wonder Sima Muhan said that this guy was extremely difficult to deal with. The faint aura fluctuation in his body blocked the spreading pressure within his body. Then, under the gazes of many people, Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly sat cross-legged on the ground of the plaza. His hand seals condensed and changed rapidly. Dear readers, Little Yu has updated 2 chapters today. He owes 1 chapter and will return it tomorrow. If he wants to adjust the time, he can't just update it at night. Brothers, please forgive him. He owes 1 chapter and will return it tomorrow. Chapter 645. One by one, handprints condensed, and the energy of heaven and earth spread out rapidly from all directions, madly gathering around Du Xiaofu. Talisman Array. Du Xiaofu is setting up a talisman array. Seeing the commotion caused by Du Xiaofu, someone instantly spoke. Yin Machin looked at Du Xiaofu's hand seals forming a talisman array, but he didn't do anything. He still looked at it calmly and his handsome face didn't move. Boom! In just a few breaths, a total of 22 formation flags were formed in Du Xiaofu's hands. The surrounding space suddenly shook. Du Xiaofu's face instantly turned pale. Dazzling talisman inscriptions flashed in his eyes and an ancient aura spread out from his body. It was as if a divine light was spreading. Accompanied by the pressure, even Yin Machin's expression changed slightly. A beginner 6-star talisman master who can set up a 6-star mystery-level talisman array. You are indeed extraordinary. Just based on this point, you are qualified to fight with me. Yin Machin looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled faintly. He said elegantly, but if you think that a 6-star mystery-level talisman array can do anything to me, you will be disappointed. Is that so? We will only know after we try. Du Xiaofu's pale face had a slight smile on his lips. At the same time, he waved the 22 formation flags in his hands. What is he doing? Oh my God, what is he doing? Everyone's eyes were filled with confusion. Under everyone's shocked gazes, they saw that Du Xiaofu's talisman array wasn't attacking Yin Machin. Instead, he set up the talisman array around himself. Rumble, the wind blew and the clouds surged. The talisman inscriptions shot into the sky and a terrifying talisman array was formed in an instant. It enveloped Du Xiaofu and disappeared. Is he trying to stall for time? Yin Machin's eyes moved, and he seemed to be a little surprised. Then, a powerful aura suddenly burst out from his body, and a rune light directly enveloped his body. Then, his figure directly walked into the rune array. Everyone's eyes were immediately fixed on the talisman array, waiting for some shocking movement to come out. However, as Ian Machin walked into the talisman array, there was no movement or sound other than the rippling aura that made people's mind rumble. However, in the intense battle between Sima Muhan and Ji O Ming, the muffled sounds of energy kept resounding in the air. At this moment, no one's talisman Dao weapon was used. They were fighting Dao weapons. They were fighting. Ji O Ji was extremely powerful. Ji O Ming was as he was the second in the heavens domain. Sima Muhan was Ji's Ji was Ji's. Jesus was SG was G. However, Sima Muhan was also like a fairy. Her beautiful figure was graceful as she dealt with Ji O Ming's attacks. Although it seemed like she could only defend, she was still able to handle it with ease. The battle between the two was an eye-opener for the surrounding inner sect disciples. Everyone was surprised by Ji O Ming's strength and also marveled at Sima Muhan's strength. Outside the giant rock space, it was dusk. The setting sun was as red as blood. The setting sun was round and radiated light in all directions. It was so dazzling that it was like a dream. On the mountain rocks, many old men and women were standing together. They were chatting and laughing as they waited for the opening of the giant rock space. I wonder if those rookies will be taught a lesson this time. They must be very miserable. When have those rookies not been taught a lesson? Being ruthlessly taught a lesson will be beneficial to their future cultivation. Being arrogant won't do them any good. Many elders and protectors were discussing the fate of those rookies in the giant rock space. To all the elders and protectors, it was a matter of course for rookies to be taught a lesson. Every year, the rookies in the giant rock space would be taught a lesson very miserably. Not far away, Elder Gu Qingyang was standing quietly. At this moment, he seemed rather nervous. Behind Elder Gu Qingyang, Yu Wanli was wearing a plain robe. He stood quietly and didn't dare to speak at this moment. Wanli, do you think something will happen to your junior brother? Elder Gu Qingyang couldn't help but ask Yu Wanli in a low voice. Master, don't worry. Junior brother is extraordinary. He will definitely be fine. Yu Wanli nodded and said. At this moment, he could only comfort his master. However, Yu Wanli was extremely worried. These few days, he had heard from many elders that the few human monarchs on the bronze roll had already planned to teach his junior brother a lesson in the giant rock space. If his junior brother was taught a lesson in the giant rock space, perhaps he wouldn't even be able to enter the top 128 after he came out. At that time, his master would have to pay with all his fortune. At this moment, Yu Wanli didn't dare to imagine how miserable the outcome would be. Elder Qingyang, the giant rock space is about to open. How do you think that pair of disciples, Du Xiaofu, will be taught a lesson by now? Elder Kong Zhonglei moved closer to Elder Gu Qingyang with a spurious smile. 7 days. Even if Du Xiaofu could escape from Si Ruofeng and the others a few days ago, he would still end up the same in the giant rock space. You don't have to worry about my disciple. Although the few guys on the bronze roll aren't weak, I'm afraid they aren't enough to deal with my disciple. Gu Qingyang glanced at Elder Kong Zhonglei and snorted. We'll know in a while. If Du Xiaofu won't even be able to enter the top 128, I wonder how Elder Qingyang's preparations for the wager are going. Elder Hao Zongwei laughed heartily, as if he had already seen himself winning a few Dao artifacts. Rumble. At this moment, the valley in front of them began to tremble and spatial waves began to spread. In front of the valley, spatial ripples split apart. Then, a crack slowly appeared and spread out rapidly. Alright, the giant rock space's exit has opened. They should come out now. Elder Hu Sangkuan's gray beard moved slightly. At this moment, he was also very nervous. His expression was slightly focused and expectant. After all, he had also placed a bet. Swish swish, at this moment, the gazes of all the protector elders fell on the spatial crack. The spatial crack spread and finally formed a spatial door, revealing a vast mountain range within. Many figures had already taken the lead and slowly walked out, as though they had traversed through space. Soon after, many figures appeared within the valley. One by one, the newly promoted inner sect disciples walked out. The badges on their shoulders were red and their auras were chaotic. Their expressions were miserable and it was obvious that they had all been taught a lesson. Sigh, the result is still the same. Looks like the newly promoted inner sect disciples this time are still being taught a lesson by the guys on the bronze roll. The guys on the bronze roll were also taught a lesson at this time last year. Many of them were taught quite a lesson. They will probably have to recuperate for a few months. Looking at the appearance of the newly promoted inner sect disciples, the elders and protectors who were waiting outside were not surprised. This result was too normal. They were taught quite a lesson. Elder Kong Zhonglei, Elder Hao Zhongwei, Elder Qian Mingze, Elder Hu Sangkuan and the others who had placed bets on Elder Gu Qingyang were all smiling at this moment. They were looking for Du Xiaofu in the group of badly beaten inner sect disciples. If Du Xiaofu was taught a lesson, they would not even need to participate in the second round. They would have already won. However, when they searched, they unexpectedly did not find Du Xiaofu's figure. Elder Gu Qingyang and Yu Wanli's gazes were also tightly fixed on the group of people who had walked out. Their gazes were extremely nervous. Swish swish, many outstanding figures leaped out. Feng Xiangyu, Su Chuyun, Shi Yunsheng and Xu Yang appeared in the valley. Behind them, there were a few figures with shining badges. These guys managed to keep the energy bronze talisman. They are not simple. There were elders and protectors who had praises in their eyes. As human kings, Feng Xiangyu and the other three were the talents that the Manchu focused on nurturing this time. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Martial Uncle Du is great. After the 400 to 500 badly beaten newly promoted inner sect disciples and Feng Xiangyu and the others took the lead to walk out, cheers suddenly sounded from the spatial crack at the exit. The sound waves rolled out. Then, the figures of young men and women leaped out excitedly. The figures leaped out and automatically gathered on both sides of the spatial crack. They waved their arms and cheered. In a short period of time, more than 300 people had gathered. The badges on the shoulders of these newly promoted inner sect disciples were shining, proving that the energy bronze talisman had not been stolen by the bronze leaderboard. Seeing these figures, the elders, protectors, and the others who had spoken out of the gate were gradually puzzled. More than 300 people's energy bronze talismans were still intact. Why were they so excited? This did not seem right. Swish swish, then, more than 10 figures leaped out from the spatial crack under many puzzled gazes. These 10 figures leaped out of the spatial crack and stood quietly. The one in the lead was a purple-robed young man. His eyes were resolute and determined. He carried a broadsword wrapped in purple cloth on his back. The badge at the end of the broadsword was shining. Beside the purple-robed young man was a charming woman. Her eyes were bright and her eyes were light purple. Her silky black hair fluttered around her slender waist. She was young and enchanting. It was enough to make a man lose his soul. Behind the two of them, there were 9 extraordinary young men and women. Everyone knew that these 9 people were the 9 talents among this batch of newly promoted inner sect disciples. At this moment, they were all clustered behind the purple-robed young man and the young enchanting woman. Chapter 646. The man and woman both wore the ancient Heaven Sect's badge on their shoulders. Their badges were shining brightly, proving that the copper energy talismans in their badges were still intact. These 2 people were Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. That kid seems to be fine. At this moment, almost all the elders and protectors were looking at Du Xiaofu. Looking at Du Xiaofu's smug expression at this time, his expression was indifferent. Other than his face being a little pale, there was nothing wrong with him. He seems to be fine. At this time, Elder Gu Qingyang's gaze also fell on Du Xiaofu from afar. His expression was solemn and worried. When he saw that his beloved disciple didn't seem to be in trouble, he immediately relaxed a lot. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. The surrounding hundreds of inner sect disciples raised their arms and shouted. They seemed to be shocked by something and were extremely excited. This caused the elders and protectors to be extremely puzzled. Du Xiaofu looked around and waved his hands slightly. The surrounding shouts immediately quieted down and hundreds of people responded to his call. This scene caused the elders and protectors to be even more puzzled. Something that could cause hundreds of new inner sect disciples to respond to his call was definitely not a simple matter. Raising his head slightly, Du Xiaofu saw his master Gu Qingyang in front of him. His pale face instantly revealed a slight smile. Swoosh swoosh, the profound qi under his feet surged. After a few flashes, Du Xiaofu arrived in front of Elder Gu Qingyang. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Master, Third Senior." "Greetings, elders." "Xiaofu, did the fellow on the copper board make things difficult for you?" Elder Gu Qingyang asked tentatively. He looked at the smile on his disciple's face. His disciple's calm appearance made it seem as if nothing major had happened in the giant rock space. Moreover, the energy copper talisman was still inside his badge. "I am fine. The people on the copper board did not make things difficult for me." Du Xiaofu replied to Elder Gu Qingyang. "Du Xiaofu, did Si Ruofeng and the rest not make a move on you?" Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Elder Hao Zongwei immediately asked Du Xiaofu with a puzzled expression. Si Ruofeng and the rest had already announced that they would deal with Du Xiaofu, who had offended the bronze board. It was impossible that they would not attack Du Xiaofu. Si Ruofeng. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and replied to Elder Hao Zongwei, "Elder, Si Ruofeng did make a move. However, he became much more obedient after I beat him up." As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the surrounding elders and protectors were stunned. They all looked at Du Xiaofu in astonishment and their gazes were filled with doubt. "Kid, are you saying that Si Ruofeng was defeated by you?" Elder Kong Zhonglei looked at Du Xiaofu and seemed to be somewhat doubtful. Who was Si Ruofeng? He was ranked third on the copper board and had the talent of a human king. It was definitely impossible for a new inner sect disciple to defeat him. "Elder, I did not defeat him alone. I teamed up with little niece Sima Muhan." Du Xiaofu said softly. Taking advantage of the fact that Sima Muhan was not beside him, he continued to take advantage of the situation. Elder Hu Sankuan could not help but ask Du Xiaofu, "Did Yin Machin and Ji Aoming not make a move against you?" Following Elder Hu Sankuan's question, the surrounding elders and protectors also stared curiously at Du Xiaofu. Even if Si Ruofeng had been defeated by them, Yin Machin and Ji Aoming, the two terror overlords, would not let the matter rest. At this moment, not only were the numerous elders and protectors puzzled, even Elder Gu Qingyang and Yuanli were extremely puzzled. Yin Machin and Ji Aoming are not weak, but they were unable to do anything to me and little niece Sima Muhan within 2 hours. Therefore, we are fine. Du Xiaofu said with a smile. "Kid, are you saying that Yin Machin was unable to do anything to you within 2 hours?" Elder Chang Mingze stared at Du Xiaofu and asked. "You can say that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here unscathed." Du Xiaofu nodded without any trace of politeness. "Be careful, the wind will cut your tongue. The people on the bronze roll will be coming out soon. Then, we will know whether it's true or not." Elder Hao Zongwei clearly did not believe that Yin Machin would be unable to do anything to Du Xiaofu within 2 hours. This was absolutely impossible. One had to know that even if Yin Machen's strength was on the gold roll, he would be able to enter the top 10 terror overlords. If he still could not do anything to Du Xiaofu within 2 hours, then this Du Xiaofu would have to be a monster. Du Xiaofu's words clearly made Elder Gu Qingyang somewhat suspicious. Elder Gu Qingyang naturally knew Yin Machen's strength very well. Whoosh whoosh, just as Elder Hao Zongwei's words fell, nearly 100 figures leaped out from the boulder space's exit. There were a total of 99 extraordinary young men and women. The ones at the front were Yin Machen, Ji Ming, Si Ruofeng, Bai Fu Rong, Feng Yutang, Su Qing, and other outstanding talents. When these 99 people came out, the elders and protectors looked as though they had seen a ghost and were stunned. Under the gazes of the elders and protectors, the 99 disciples on the bronze roll, other than Yin Machen, Ji Ming, and more than 20 others, the remaining 70-some people were extremely defeated and looked miserable. Their badges were dim, their breathing was chaotic, and their expressions were dispirited. At a glance, it was clear that they had been ruthlessly ravaged. Let's go. Yin Machen looked around. After bowing to the elders and protectors in the distance, he spoke to the people behind him and left. Sigh, all the people on the bronze roll had ugly expressions at this moment. Quite a few sighed helplessly and did not want to stay here any longer. They immediately left with Yin Machen. Bai Fu Rong and the others had their profound qi sealed by Du Xiaofu and could only be helped by others to leave. What's going on? What exactly happened inside? Elder Hao Zongwei and the others were stunned. It's nothing major. They were just beaten up. They should be able to recover in a few months. Du Xiaofu said softly. The gazes of the elders and protectors fell on Du Xiaofu. Their gazes were filled with complicated emotions. Du Xiaofu, 782 copper energy talismans, ranked first. Judge Hao, 603 copper energy talismans, ranked second. Sima Muhan, 308 copper energy talismans, ranked seventh. An elder's voice came from the valley. The shock in his voice could not be concealed, causing the other 500 or so new inner sect disciples to feel envious and jealous. Why is it still first? If I had known, I would have hidden a bit more. Du Xiaofu felt helpless. The bird that sticks out gets shot. He did not want to be first. Du Xiaofu casually took out some copper energy talismans. He had not expected to end up in first place. If he had known this would happen, he would have taken out less. At any rate, no one knew just how many copper energy talismans he had plundered this time. To Du Xiaofu, it was best to keep a low profile when stealing things. He did not expect that he would still be first. Ha 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 ha, Hao Zongwei, Kang Zhonglei, do you see? Yin Machen, Ji Ming, and Si Ruofeng are not weak. It's just that they can't do anything to my disciple. Ha! Elder Gu Qingyang laughed proudly. The worries he had for the past few days had been swept away. However, Hao Zongwei, Kang Zhonglei, and the other elders and protectors had ugly expressions on their faces. Could it be that I placed the wrong bet? Hu Sankuan, Elder Qian Mingzei, and the others began to worry. Si Ruofeng and the others had not been able to stop Du Xiaofu. It seemed that they had already lost half of their bet. At night, the moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the mountains. The entire ancient heaven sect was in an uproar. The news of Du Xiaofu and the other new inner sect disciples trampling on the bronze-ranking experts in the giant rock space and robbing them of everything spread out. Everyone who heard it was shocked. Du Xiaofu's name and even Martial Uncle Du's name spread throughout the ancient heaven sect overnight. This is a violation of the sect rules and disrupting the giant rock space. How can this be? How dare that Du Xiaofu gather the new inner sect disciples and gang up on a bronze-ranking disciple? He must be severely punished. He even dared to snatch the energy copper talismans of a disciple on the bronze ranking. How audacious! He must be severely punished. When the news spread, many of the elders expressed their dissatisfaction and clamored for Du Xiaofu to be punished severely. Of course, these fierce elders were mostly related to the disciples who had been taught a lesson on the bronze board. Who dares to touch my disciple? I'm not done with him. Try me if you don't believe me. At this time, Elder Gu Qingyang also spoke out and was determined to protect his disciple. But at this time, the ancient heaven sect master did not express his attitude. Many of the Manchu experts could only guess the sect master's thoughts. At night, the moonlight poured down. The huge mountain peak was extremely peaceful at this time. How did that kid make it through the last 2 hours? In the side hall, Sima Ta Xing asked Protector Hao beside him. That brat set up an extremely special talisman array. According to the third elder, that talisman array should be an extremely rare ancient illusion array. That brat's talisman array was set up around him, causing Yin Machin to have no choice but to break into the talisman array. The result should be that brat's trap and trapped him inside for a full 2 hours. After Yin Machin broke that brat's talisman array, the exit to the giant rock space also opened. Protector Hao's expression was also extremely helpless and moved as he said, Mu Han and Ji O-ming have been fighting for a long time. Within 2 hours, Ji O-ming did not have the slightest advantage. After fighting for a full 2 hours, the exit finally opened and he could only give up. It seems that the little fellows on the bronze ranking have all suffered quite a bit this time. Sima Ta Xing smiled and said, that's good as well. This is also a good thing for those little fellows on the bronze ranking. Chapter 647. Sect Leader. There are quite a number of elders in the sect who seem to have some opinions about everything that happened in the giant rock space this time around. I'm afraid that they are all waiting for your opinion. Protector Hao said to Sima Taxing. Those elders who have opinions should be related to the little guys on the bronze list. Sima Taxing knew what was going on. He looked at Protector Hao and said, Protector Hao, inform those elders who have opinions and that little guy Du Xiaofu to come to my place tomorrow morning. Does Sect Master want to punish Du Xiaofu? Protector Hao was puzzled. I just want to see that little guy. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Sima Taxing said. At night, in a courtyard alone, there was a defensive seal formation. In the misty space, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged. His body was enveloped in a faint white light. An ancient aura spread out. After an unknown period of time, when Du Xiaofu's complexion was rosy and his breathing was stable and strong, he withdrew his hand seals. The white halo of divine light around him slowly withdrew into his body. Then, he opened his eyes that had been tightly closed. Huff! Huff! While his eyes were shining, he spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Then, his eyes slowly became clear. Your recovery isn't slow. I didn't expect that the cultivation method of the golden-winged great rocks would have such a miraculous effect after being cultivated by humans. Zhen Qingquan's illusory figure also appeared in this misty space. At this moment, Zhen Qingquan had been staying in the ancient desolate space. The comparison of time in this space allowed Zhen Qingquan to recover faster. Brother Qingquan, how long will it take for you to fully recover? Du Xiaofu stood up and felt the energy in his body recover. A smile appeared on his face. It will take some time for me to fully recover. Now, I'm much better than before. Zhen Qingquan looked at Du Xiaofu and said softly, the ancient heaven sect is indeed worthy of being one of the 9 great powers of the Central Plains. Today, that Yin Machin actually broke your illusory formation in 2 hours. He's not weak at all. Thinking of the illusory matrix, Zhen Qingquan was also quite moved. Du Xiaofu had practiced the enchanting matrix a few days ago. In just a few days in this space, Du Xiaofu had mastered it completely. Moreover, the effect was far better than what he had expected. According to Zhen Qingquan's estimation, even an ordinary peak Martial King realm cultivator would not be able to break out of the illusion formation in a short period of time. However, the young man called Yin Machin was able to break the formation in 2 hours. That was enough to prove that he was extraordinary. Without great willpower, it was almost impossible to break through the illusion. This also proved that Yin Machin was extraordinary. Speaking of Yin Machin, Du Xiaofu was also quite moved. The ancient heaven sect did not have an undeserved reputation. The extraordinary and powerful young disciples of the ancient heaven sect proved how powerful the ancient heaven sect was. Brother Qing Chun, your enchanting matrix is extraordinary. I'll continue to comprehend it some other day. It should be of great use in the future. Du Xiaofu was quite interested in the enchanting matrix that he had learned a few days ago. If it were not for the enchanting matrix, he was afraid that he would not be able to stop Yin Machin even if he did not go all out. There are more than one enchanting matrix. However, even among talisman masters, only a few people can comprehend and practice it. Cultivating and comprehending the enchanting matrix requires the support of an extremely strong spiritual force. In the process of cultivating and comprehending, it is very easy to go mad. Once you are trapped in your own enchanting matrix, no one can break out of it. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu with a faint shock in his eyes. When this guy had first cultivated the enchanting matrix, it had been like an unparalleled realm. With a little guidance from Zhen Qingchun, Du Xiaofu had progressed like a flying sword. He had successfully comprehended it in just a few days. When Zhen Qingchun had first cultivated it, it had taken him a whole month. His comprehension was already absolutely terrifying. However, he did not expect this guy to be even faster. After a slight pause, Zhen Qingchun continued to say to Du Xiaofu, comprehend the enchanting matrix well. It will naturally have an unexpected effect on you in the future. If you can cultivate it to a high level, it will be enough to enchant people for eternity. Du Xiaofu nodded. His eyes moved secretly. With a smile on his face, he asked Zhen Qingchun, Big Brother Qingchun, do you have any other methods that are suitable for me to cultivate? This was Du Xiaofu's true goal. Every time his big brother Zhen Qingchun gave him something good, it was not an ordinary item. Given Du Xiaofu's style, how could he not take the opportunity to dig out more things? After going in such a big circle, this is your goal, right? Zhen Qingchun saw through Du Xiaofu. After being with Du Xiaofu for so long, he was definitely the person who understood Du Xiaofu the most. How could Zhen Qingchun not know Du Xiaofu's goal? After rolling his eyes at Du Xiaofu, he said, when you comprehend the enchanting matrix to a level that I am satisfied with, I can consider teaching you another method. That method has a lot to do with the enchanting matrix. You must also comprehend the enchanting matrix to a certain level before you can comprehend and cultivate the method I want to teach you. Thank you, Big Brother Qingchun. Du Xiaofu immediately smiled with satisfaction. The things his big brother Zhen Qingchun had were not ordinary things. When you can cultivate that method, you will have another great method in the future. It will be very useful. If you had that method in the giant rock space, you wouldn't have needed to set up the enchanting matrix to stall the human king Yin Machin, Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Human king Yin Machin. Du Xiaofu murmured softly. He raised his head slightly and asked Zhen Qingchun, Big Brother Qingchun, actually, I don't know what a human king is. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu in confusion and said, it's strange. I remember that your martial veins were only between grade 2 and grade 3. Now, it seems to have reached grade 3 martial veins. Your martial veins have improved a lot. Du Xiaofu didn't pay much attention to the improvement of his martial veins. He guessed that this improvement might have something to do with the mysterious technique he was comprehending becoming stronger and stronger. He raised his head and asked Zhen Qingchun, could it be that the talent of a human king is related to martial veins? Of course it's related. It's related to martial veins. Zhen Qingchun explained to Du Xiaofu in detail, martial veins are divided into grade 1 and grade 9 martial veins. You should know that the higher the grade of martial veins, the greater the achievement on the path of martial cultivation. This has been the unchanging rule of the world for countless years. It's also an unchanging fact. After a slight pause, Zhen Qingchun continued, in this world, there will always be geniuses. Some people have martial veins that exceed grade 9 and become the most outstanding people among people. Their future is limitless. With martial veins that exceed grade 9, they can suppress other people in terms of martial veins. They are outstanding people among people, heroes among people. Their future is limitless. Those who exceed grade 9 martial veins and are heroes among people are called outstanding people. Du Xiaofu seemed to understand something. How many people in this world could surpass grade 9 martial veins? They were indeed heroes among people. In this world, there are some people who are blessed from birth. Maybe some people didn't know that they were blessed from the beginning. They will slowly unseal themselves in the future. These people are even more blessed than the outstanding people. Zhen Qingchun said, these people were born with a special kind of martial vein. By relying on this special martial vein, they will also obtain a special kind of power. This special power either comes from heaven and earth or comes from the bloodline. It will be very close to them. With this special power brought by the special martial vein, their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Their future is also limitless. This kind of martial vein is called king martial vein. These people are also called kings among people, natural talents of human kings. Back then, Lu Kuan had the immortal martial vein and Yin Machin had the storm martial vein. Are these all king martial veins? Du Xiaofu was really envious. He only had a grade 3 martial vein. If he hadn't comprehended the mysterious move, he would probably still have a trash martial vein. However, some people were born with king martial veins. The real immortal martial vein is not as simple as the king martial vein. Lu Kuan's martial vein is not as simple as that. That's why he only has the natural talents of human kings. The storm martial vein is naturally a king martial vein. Zhen Qingchun said, these special martial veins may be inherited from the bloodline, or they may be born. There are many reasons for their formation. It may be related to water, fire, wind, or mountains and lakes. It comes from everything in heaven and earth. In the future, you will slowly understand that there is no lack of geniuses in this world. However, if you want to become a real expert, it is not enough to rely on true talent. Your own efforts are the most important. Du Xiaofu nodded seriously. Talent was one of the reasons. If you want to become an expert, you naturally can't rely on talent alone. Actually, the martial veins in your body should be much stronger than those at the king martial vein level. Even those at the king martial vein level cannot create martial vein spiritual seals. It is a pity that your martial vein, Zhen Qingchun sighed slightly. Martial vein spiritual seals were definitely not something that could be created by ordinary martial veins. Even those at the king martial vein level could not do it. However, Du Xiaofu's situation was also very strong. He could only sigh casually. Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed with a faint coldness. He said softly, no matter who did all this, we will know in the future. The next morning, the sun shone on the earth. The morning breeze was cool, and the blue sky was clear. The scenery in the ancient heaven sect was picturesque. Greetings, Master. How are you? Du Xiaofu bowed in front of the mountain's courtyard. He was surprised that Elder Gu Qingyang had come so early in the morning. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.